Hello guys, welcome to Proxima What Ifs. So in this video, we will see, what if Izuku was tortured until he broke and became perfect villain? If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. Black Sight, Green Fire. Silence isn't quiet here, it's pressed flat, engineered, fat with rules. The cell eats sound the way a paper towel eats spills, like it knew the mess was coming and planned for it. Izuku sits with his back against cold composite and his eyes open. No pacing, no muttering, no wasted oxygen. He keeps time with the exact weight of footsteps moving the corridor outside, one set with a soft toe lead, one with a heel-weighted limp, one that never deviates from a 5-count turn at the corner mirror because the guard thinks precision is safety. Black Whip is a whisper in his skin. Threads no thicker than hair curl out from his knuckles and settle along the floor, then the ceiling, then the seam where the door meets the frame. Every touch gives him a measurement, vibration, temperature. The tiny sucking draft where the vent pulls. He maps the corridor he can't see like he's playing violin with the building. He blinks slow and lets one for all hum in short, harmless ticks, microscopic OFA bursts that travel no farther than his wrists. They're not attacks. They're radar pings for a human body. When the field pushes back from a solid plate 2 meters out, he notes it. When it flows into empty and returns soft, he draws that too. It's all lines and squares in his head. It's a puzzle he refuses to be angry at. Something different touches the thread at the base of the door. Not a boot. Rolling weight. Wheels. The meal cart. The one with the dummy compartment under the tray warmer because they assume, special population, means contraband. It doesn't. It just means they're lazy the 3rd month in. He breathes in. He lets his shoulders drop. Then he starts to cough. It's not dramatic. It's not a performance. It's a cough he aims at the acoustic sweet spot of the CE. Illing so the sound kill panel bleeds it into the return vents. Not enough to trigger a med flag. Just enough to annoy the board guard who wants a quick shift. Toe lead enters the field of his thread. There's a keycard tap, a fail. A second tap. The lock chirps. A hard latch slides back. The door opens 6 centimeters. The safety chain catches. A gloved hand slides the tray in. The food is a smear of beige he ignores. His cough turns wet for 1 second and then stops dead. Prisoner 8-1. The voice asks through the chain opening, already annoyed. Eat. He doesn't move. He looks at the tray. Like there's something fascinating about cold eggs. Eat, Midoriya. He lifts the fork. The guard relaxes exactly the amount he calculated. Black Whip slips under the tray, wraps the thin metal lip near the guard's thumb, and jerks. The tray flips. Beige splats the threshold. The guard swears and reaches on instinct. Dumb, human, fix-it reflex. Izuku is already moving. OFA flick. Fingers snap the chain stopper with a microburst. The door slides wider. He's through the gap, low, off the line of sight. His shoulder hits the guard's knee and the second burst rotates the joint instead of breaking it, non-fatal, still mean. The baton clatters. Izuku catches it on the bounce without looking and wraps the side of the guard's helmet near the audio port to blow the man's hearing for 5 seconds. He doesn't need 5 seconds. 2 is enough. Down the corridor. Limp Heels rounds the corner, mouth open for a shout that the panels won't allow. Izuku spins the baton once, measures the angle, and throws. The baton ping-pongs off the restraint camera housing and into Limp Heels' forearm. His hand opens. Gun falls. Black Whip wraps the slide and yoinks it under a bench, out of play. The lights go to emergency mode. Dim, red. Heartbeat slow. The hall breathes like a throat. Izuku doesn't smile. He's busy. He drags the first guard into the cell and sits him against the cot, hands zip-cuffed with the guard's own zip. He gives the man a nod that says, clear as words, not personal. The guard, to his credit, nods back like he understands and also hates that he understands. Then Izuku steps into the hall and becomes a simpler problem to any camera, a moving person with clear directions. Down the left corridor. Skip the obvious exit that leads to a killbox. Past the first T-junction. Second door on the right. Maintenance. The door panel asks for a badge. He holds the first guard's card to it. Red. He flips to the guard's bracelet and peels the flexible NFC strip free with a fingernail. He presses it above the panel where the plastic scuffs are thickest. Green. Places like this train their own. Inside. Mops, solvents, vents, the smell of metal tightened too many times. He presses 2 fingers to the nearest duct and gives it a love tap, just enough OFA to feel the return. The duct responds with a lazy vibration that belongs to the east fans, not the north. Good. His map clicks. He knows which way the air exits to the vehicle bay. He doesn't climb into the duct. He takes the push broom and leans it in the corner where a camera will see a single stalk at a weird angle. It's nothing. But nothing keeps people looking at the wrong place. He steps back into the hall. A metal squeak, rapid footfalls, someone running. A civilian uniform cuts around the far corner and then freezes. She's 20-something, underpaid, and carrying a tablet like it's a life raft. She looks at Izuku, then at the baton on the floor, and then at the opposite wall where the emergency plan lists Sev. N rules about not doing exactly what she's doing. Don't, she says, like she's been told to say that to anyone who looks like him. He lifts an empty hand. Hey, calm, friendly, no gravel. He nods at the tablet. Can you kill the camera loop in this hall for 10 seconds? 10, he repeats, not pushing, not threatening. Just asking like it's reasonable. You know what the loop is. You hate it. She swallows. Her face does that thing where fear and anger mix until they look like decision. Her thumb moves. She never takes her eyes off him. 10, she says. Now, thank you. He moves as the Camerafed stutters. Blackwhip leaves his hand in 3 lines and clicks open the latency door on the power trunk. He slips the guard's bracelet into the seam and gives it a chew with a tiny, precise OFA pop. The bracelet sparks, smokes, harmless smoke, but the smell trips a maintenance alert, and maintenance alerts outrank guard chatter on low power. Down the corridor, the loudspeaker tries to speak and coughs instead. Izuku doesn't wait for it to get better. He jogs toward the elevator bank. Not fast. Fast gets noticed on the wrong monitors. He moves like he belongs here, like the rhythm of the place fits his stride. He presses the call button with the joint of his thumb so he won't leave a good print, because old habits belong to his spine now. The doors open to a transluce NT barrier inside the car with a little white sign that says Archon clearance only. He grins like he's seen a magic trick. Archon. Good to know what they call their sky toys. He doesn't fight the barrier. He drops into the stairwell instead and takes them in 4s, springing quiet between landings so the sound panels catch nothing but air. He counts down landings. 5, 4, 3, and stops 1. Flight above the sublevel 2 comms plaque. Blackwhip curls under the door and tastes the room. Cold hum. Not alive. Server racks. 2 warm bodies at the far end. The chalky ozone bite of anti-quirk. Foam canisters in the ceiling. Gray cylinders, weak seams, he marks them for later. He opens the door like he's bored. Walks in like he's later than he meant to be. The 2 techs look up. One is the tablet woman who killed the loop. The other is a man with a mustache, the kind that thinks it gives him authority. His hand moves toward the alarm. Hey, Izuku says, and the word carries just enough energy to bridge the distance. Don't. Quote. Mustache freezes. Tablet woman bites her lip. You've got maybe a minute before the next camera check notices the stairwell open. Then let's not waste it, Izuku says. He points at the rack labeled Uplink A. That one stream. Emergency all call. I need 10 seconds, and then you never saw me. Mustache's eyes flick to the foam canister, then to the emergency baton mount by the door. Then back to Izuku. He's calculating. Izuku doesn't interrupt. Mustache needs to watch Izuku not reach for weapons. Mustache needs to see a guy whose hands are empty and steady. That stream flags law enforcement, Mustache says, stalling. Good, Izuku says. Let them watch. Mustache almost smirks. You want attention. I want witnesses, Izuku answers. And I want you 2 to go home tonight without extra paperwork. The tablet woman squeezes the corner of her device so hard the case creaks. If I do this, I never worked here. You never worked here, Izuku says. And because that's not enough, He adds, "You don't deserve to be a footnote to someone else's cowardice." She looks at him for a heartbeat that lands heavier than sirens. Then she plugs a line into uplink A, types a string with knuckles white, and nods. 10 seconds, she says, and flips the switch. Izuku doesn't deliver a speech. He doesn't recite crimes. He lifts the device off the rack with both hands so the frame catches his face and the rack label and the red stenciled letters above the door that say hazard, acoustic suppression, things hard to fake. He says his name. He says a date. He says a location. He turns the camera so the hallway placard that reads Sublevel 2 glows on the corner of the feed. Then he walks to the window and angles the glass so the reflection shows a guard walking a corridor in the uniform everyone knows and no one has ever seen on TV. 10 seconds ends like a blade. The stream cuts. The tablet falls silent. Somewhere, higher up, doors slam in. Somebody very important throws a cup at a wall. Mustache swears under his breath. "You're dead." "I'm busy," Izuku says. Different problem. He looks at the ceiling foam canisters. Those go off if someone breathes weird, right? Mustache follows his gaze, confused, until the confusion flips to horror. "If you try to." Blackwhip lances up and hooks the canister by the manual test toggle. A microburst punches the nozzle. It coughs open. Anti-quirk foam drools like concrete milk and then shoots sideways hard as a water main when it hits gravity. The second canister triggers in sympathy. The room becomes a party no one wanted. Izuku's already moving for the door. The foam follows him in slow, sad blobs, but he's in the hall before it remembers how to fly. He doesn't slam the door. He ghost closes it, and the panel seal keeps the worst inside. He hears the tablet woman cough out a laugh, half shock. She'll survive. She'll have a weird story about the day she decided to be brave the easy way. Up one level. The stairs smell like fresh paint under disinfectant. They've scrubbed the numbers, which tells him this place expects both visitors and guilt. He hits Sublevel 1, Armor. Y, Tactical, and the lights argue with each other about which mode is more urgent. He eases the door open with 2 rubber pads his fingers make from the tips of his gloves. The armory is bright and organized like a pharmacy. Rows of boxes with make, model, dose. Anti-quirk rounds, shock web grenades, emergency patches. He indexes non-lethal first because that's the way he was trained when training still felt moral. A voice comes easy and smooth from the glass above the racks. "Midoriya Izuku." He looks up. Ballistic glass. Behind it, a hallway like a viewing gallery with thin figures behind it, suits and tactical vests. All looking down at him like a rare bug pinned to cork. One man stands centered and calm, tie straight, hair neat enough to be printed, eyes like a spreadsheet will never shock him. "Director Seiren Kuratsuki," Izuku says, because the man would prefer to be the one who says his own name and sometimes you take the little things away first. "You built this place tidy." "I wasn't alone," Seiren says. His voice doesn't need a speaker to be heard. The armory mics love him. "You look good for someone who spent 3 months in a cell that sang you to sleep." "I don't sleep," Izuku says. He lifts a shock web grenade, weighs it, and sets it down. He picks up a visor labeled Field Ops, Link. The visor hums in his hands, hungry for a face. "Do you tell your people what the lullaby is?" Seiren's mouth almost smiles. Hero rhetoric dies young in rooms like this. "Heroism didn't die," Izuku says. He meets Seiren's eyes through the glass and lets the truth sit there, warm but not kind. "I just bent it where it can cut." Seiren's chin cocks half a degree. The suits behind him shift like someone inhaled too loud. Izuku puts the visor on and the world arranges itself with tags and channels he isn't supposed to touch. The visor wants an Archon handshake. He feeds it the bracelet's ghost key. It purrs open, obedient, because he knows what to feed machines when he wants them to think he's a friend. The HUD floods with camera angles, uplink statuses, a satellite icon blinking green. In the corner, Seraph Orbital, calibration hold. Above that, Archon Auth access, prime. A second line, Archon 01 ready, Sarah. He holds the word the way you hold a knife before you learn how it balances. Seiren watches him watch it. "There are threats you can't physically punch anymore, Midoriya. We have a responsibility. Responsible people don't hide in rooms like this, Izuku says, and every word lands light, a pat on the shoulder that quietly drops a tracer. They admit what they're doing to the sky. Seiren looks past him at the racks, at the tiny red labels that mark escalations. You think you're the first to burn a snake nest. You're just a better camera angle. Maybe, Izuku allows. But I'm a camera angle with legs. The alarm shifts pitch. The building doesn't like how many things are happening that weren't scheduled. Izuku flicks 2 shock web grenades onto the ceiling by different vents and tags them for remote. He slides a non-lethal stunner into a thigh holster and leaves the lethal case closed. A door opens behind the glass. Tactical enters the viewing hall. Helmets, foam guns. The whole black-on-black catalog look. The leader taps a panel and the armory's floor bleeds a pale mist, not anti-quirk. Coolant. It will make footing slick and turn speed into comedy. Izuku's boots adhere with a soft sound he's learned to make with black whip pressed along his soles, tiny barbs he can dissolve later. He breathes in, measures distances in one breath, and commits. He doesn't charge the door they expect. He runs at the wall left of it and goes vertical. The cool mist turns to glitter spray as his boots kiss the glass above, leave no mark. And push off into a twist that drops him behind the nearest rack. He throws a glance up through the shelf gaps. The tactical unit is moving as a column, not a net. Good. He can teach them. He pops his head out just far enough that the second man in the column sees him and fires. Foam splats the rack. Izuku slides low, pushes OFA through the soles enough to skid like a hockey puck, and whips a line around the third man's ankle. He yanks. The man goes down. The column breaks. He stands and drops a web grenade on the ceiling above them and hand pops it. A lattice blossoms like angry frost and pins shoulders to the floor without taking anyone's breath. He doesn't gloat. He doesn't look at Seiren to score points. He moves to the far side of the room where an emergency exit sits under a polite sign. Emergency exits in places like this don't go outside. They go to alleys between ideas. The door is bolted and biometric. He hums OFA into his fingertip and taps the sensor with rhythm, not force, 3 short, 1 long. The sensor coughs, reboots, and trusts the bolt to do the job while it thinks about what it is. He yanks the bolt back manually and steps into the alley. The alley isn't an alley. It's a thin corridor between armory and server block with a slit window halfway up to let someone smoke a cigarette when they still thought cigarettes solved anything. He glances up at the SL window and sees a bullet star in the glass, old, repaired badly. The pattern reads like a sermon to a trained eye. High-angle approach, 0 drift, clean entrance, a shallow exit line. Professional sniper. He doesn't smile. He files it away and keeps moving. You don't chase ghosts when the room is full of people. At the end of the corridor, the vehicle bay yawns open, half in shadow. A van idles with headlights off. There are 2 guards by the driver's side. One is the limping one from upstairs, brave, stubborn, recalibrated to fight again. The other clicks his safety off with a hand that wants to impress somebody watching. Hands, the second guard says. His voice shakes. That's fine. Lots of voices shake around the part where choices get real. Izuku lifts his hands. He doesn't step closer. He looks at the limp. You're going to regret this, Limp says, and there's no malice in it. He looks tired. They told me your file. They said you'd try to make this gentle. That's cruel. It's efficient, Izuku says. Broken bones slow a day down. I like my days fast. The second guard takes a half step to his left. His shadow crosses the line of light from the bay door. Izuku waits for the exact center of the step and then pulses OFA through his knees like a tap dancer trying to bounce a coin. The coin is the concrete under the guard's boots. The ripple trips his foot into the only slick patch in 5 meters. He pinwheels, doesn't fall, throws his gun across his body to catch himself. Izuku doesn't grab it. He palms the slide into his coat so fast the guard doesn't notice the gun is suddenly just a stick. Limp doesn't move. He's watching the way you watch a storm decide where to go. Go home, Izuku tells him. Tell them I said your knee needs a brace every other day. They'll hate the expense. It's important they hate it. Who are you when you talk like that? Limp asks, and it comes out sad. A guy who can't let you decide if you die, Izuku says. Not today. A third voice cuts from the catwalk above the bay. That one belongs to me. The civvy tech from comms stands there in a scarecrow of borrowed armor, helmet lopsided, a foam gun held 12 inches from the right place. Her courage outruns her training by a city block. She aims at Izuku. Her finger starts to close. Her eyes are glass with adrenaline. He moves and the world slows. Not for drama, for decisions. He could take the shot. It won't kill him. He could let her shoot and then show the bruise to somebody else later for sympathy. He could hurt her. He could not. He springs up the sea. At walk post and lands in front of her in one breath. He gently pushes the barrel high with 2 fingers and lets the foam cough into the ceiling. He grabs the magnet latch on her chest rig and clicks it, cuts the weight. He peels the helmet back and sets it on the rail so it doesn't roll off. You did something brave, he tells her, quiet and close. Now do something smart. Leave. She blinks deer remembering the directions to the forest. She turns. She runs. Her half-finished courage clatters on the stairs like dropped coins. From the armory behind him, the shock web lattice he left complains as someone drills it. Seiren will get his people free. The building's clock ticks louder. Drones amp up somewhere above the ceiling, a swarm waking. Izuku hops the rail, drops to the bay floor, and cuts for the side door. A sensor notices him. The anti-vehicle barrier slams down 3 meters from the exit, a red and white jaw. He doesn't punch it. He kneels and looks under it like he's checking for a lost wallet. Blackwhip snakes under and up, clicks the manual release lever with a little kiss. The barrier sighs up like it forgot why it was angry. Outside is damp night and a wind that tastes like cut copper. The air past the bay door is honest in a way the building isn't. It doesn't promise anything. It doesn't ask him to prove himself again and again to a test no one will admit exists. He steps into that honesty and stops because the narrow lot is brighter than it ought to be. Floodlights flare. A drone descends on a float of sound no human throat can make. Its belly opens like a flower with bad ideas. The muzzle inside glitters with the wrong kind of light. He angles his body so the shot will go between where he was and where he'll be. OFA screams through his calves and out the balls of his feet. Not in a roar but a clean, mean beam. He vaults left. The drone spits a spear of quirk damping light across the pavement and turns a strip of asphalt to dead, dusty color. He doesn't fight the drone with power. He fights it with bad manners. He throws a rock at a perfect, unreasonable angle. The rock clips the drone's alt sensor hood. The drone acts personally offended and dips. He takes its shoulder while it sulks and heaves. It spins, hits the lot, and eats itself through its own duct with a sad crunch. Your heroism broke first, a voice says from the speakers they hid under the bay eaves. Seiren. Could be. The building tries to make the line sound profound. Izuku picks up the drone's busted sensor hood and tosses it once like a coin. He lets it drop. Just bent it where it can cut, he says. Not to the building, but to himself, and maybe to the part of himself that needed to hear it in his own voice and not as a defense. His visor buzzes against his temple. In the HUD's corner, a diagram flashes, the satellite uplink map he stole from the armory feed. It's clean, almost beautiful. Lines from ground to sky. A label, Seraph Orbital, calibration hold. Under it, an access node name, Camino West. And under that, Archon 01 ready, Sarah. He takes the visor off and slides it into his coat. He doesn't need lights in his eyes, he needs the shape in his head. At the chain link fence, he digs fingers into thin wire and pulls it apart like fabric with Blackwhip under his skin as the seam ripper. The fence gives up and he steps through. There's a city beyond, not the whole thing, not the poem of it, just a loading dock, a sleepy road, a billboard that burned out the last letter and now promises HOPEL instead of hospital. It's enough. He looks once over his shoulder at the building. Not out of longing, not out of regret, just to etch the geometry in case he has to come back for a different reason. For a second, in the reflection off a security camera dome aimed wrong. He catches his face. He doesn't look broken. He looks like somebody who sat down with a pile of badly cut puzzle pieces and decided to make a better picture without permission. He takes the alley in 3 strides, hits the wall, and runs up it 2 steps just because it feels good to move like the body is a plan he's proud of. Rooftops unfold. He chooses one that gives I am the city's pulse without demanding that he make a speech about it. On the roof, the wind picks at his jacket. Sirens start somewhere. Not for him. Not yet. Maybe for the building that tried to pretend it didn't exist and now does. A little, on 1,000 screens. He studies the map in his head again. Seraph. Archons. Camino West. He holds the new words with the care of someone organizing sharp tools in a drawer. He doesn't waste time naming how the last 3 months tried to fold him into a shape that fit their drawer. That story is boring and wrong. The interesting story is the one where he decides what he does next because he can. A slow grin tries to climb his face and fails halfway. He lets it. Warmth without softness. Humor without forgiveness. He's allowed to find some things funny. The world can keep up. He takes his mask out of his pocket, then decides he doesn't need it, and puts it back. The air on his skin feels honest. He wants more of that. Behind him, a floodlight flickers, then holds steady. In the distance, a billboard blinks and dies, then blinks again, stubborn, like it isn't done being useful. He appreciates the attitude. He drops to a crouch and launches. The city takes him in like it recognizes his outline. He lands silent on one rooftop, then another, crossing alley canyons with black whip lines that vanish behind him like they were never there. He doesn't sneak. He just doesn't announce. At the edge of a shorter building, he pauses when a police drone slews by with lazy curiosity. It isn't commission tech. It's civic, underfunded, and 10 years behind. He salutes it with 2 fingers and watches it wobble away like a gull that got distracted by its own wing. He chooses a longer route home, whatever home means. The word doesn't itch. It's not a place. It's a vector that points away from cages, toward problems that deserve him. He drops into a seam between brick and rusted steel where a freight elevator huffs up through floor 2 and then down again like it's doing reps. He catches the rail, slides, and steps out into a dead factory floor with graffiti that means someone loved someone else for at least a week. He takes the back stairs, pushes through a door that sighs, and comes out into air that's cooler than it was a minute ago, like the city took a breath and didn't expect to. He walks. He doesn't run, because running is for escape and this is not escape. This is exit. At a cross street, a woman in a yellow coat with a grocery bag full of things that will bruise if you think about them too hard steps off the curb without looking. A van honks and swerves and the bag goes flying. He's already there. Not a hero, not a headline, just a pair of hands catching a tower of pears and 2 cans and the woman's frightened laugh. Thanks, she says, breathless. Yeah, he says, and hands her a pear like it's a medal and steps back into shadow before gratitude can turn into questions he won't answer. A streetlight buzzes overhead, that weird old world insect sound. He looks up through it to the slice of cloud that reflects the city back onto itself, a dim, pulsing loop. Somewhere up there a satellite waits with big ideas about who deserves to breathe. He files the thought away where the cold parts of him keep lists. He doesn't give the night a monologue. He doesn't carve promises into the air. He puts his hands in his pockets, shifts the visor so it sits better under his coat, and keeps going until the city gives him stairs that lead to a door that isn't locked because the locks here mean, try not to, not. If you do, we hurt you. Inside, a warehouse bones into a loft someone failed to evict artists from. There's a couch that never stops smelling like a joke, a table with a notch carved out of one corner and no one will confess who did it. A lamp that thinks it's a sun. He sits on the floor because the couch lies and the floor doesn't. He takes the visor out, sets it on the table, plugs it into nothing, and watches it glow on its own. He scrolls with an index finger, flicking past menu items until the uplink diagram splashes across the lenses again. He leans in, memorizes the labels. Camino West, node elevations, redundancy arcs, access call signs, Archon 01, Seraph, he says, trying the shape of it on his tongue. The word tastes like someone borrowed holiness for a tech demo. He doesn't laugh. He doesn't rage. He wants to meet it. Meeting things usually helps. He kills the visor's light. The room breathes. Pipes click in the walls. Somewhere above, a water tank shifts. Outside, the city argues with its own heartbeat and wins. He lies back, shoulder blades to concrete, eyes open, and lets the ache in his muscles settle into their shelves. Not tiredness. Inventory. He ream. MBERS the control room with its warm servers and the foam crawling down the racks like someone let oatmeal feel pride. He remembers Mustache trying to choose a version of himself he won't hate later and managing it badly, which is a start. He remembers the tablet woman's knuckles white, and the relief when she wasn't noble at the wrong moment. He remembers Saren's almost smile when he said the whoa road he would have preferred to be the one to say. He doesn't remember the cell in detail. He doesn't want to and he doesn't need to. He left enough of it on the cot when he walked out and now the rest can be trash in a system he's going to recycle. Eventually morning will try to show up and forget it's not brave here. He'll be gone before it remembers. For now he closes his eyes, not to sleep, to build a clean corridor from this roof to the next, from this node to Camino West, from a word on a HUD to a hand on a lever that says off. He opens them again because his brain thinks closing Hem means permission for memories to put on a theater production. He doesn't need the show. He needs the plan. He rolls to his feet in one smooth push and goes to the sink to drink water that tastes like metal in expectation. He wipes his mouth with the back of his hand and catches his reflection in the window. The face is the same one that used to break into analysis faster than breath. It still does, but the room where the analysis lives has fewer posters on the wall and more white paint. He doesn't look away in shame. He doesn't admire himself either. He nods to the person who decided to keep going with new rules. Then turns away because mirrors don't need overtime. He grabs a black cap from a hook, tucks his hair, grabs a jacket that doesn't belong to any side, and swings the door open. Night presses in like a friend who tells the same joke a lot but always brings food. He steps into it. The door swings shut behind him. He heads for the place where the water meets the city The cranes hold their arms up like tired saints. Camino is a walk from here if you know which alleys talk to each other. He does. He does because when you stop asking buildings for permission and start asking them for advice, they tell you more than you expect. He cuts through a tiny market where someone is still wrapping smoked fish in paper. He nods at the owner. The owner nods back because he recognizes something that isn't a face. A gate, a way of filling space like the world is crowded and you learned not to bump anyone unless they needed moving. At the pier, he breathes air that doesn't care who he is. He tastes the metal again, the same way as outside the bay, and grins when he realizes he's smiling at salt and rust like they're his allies. Maybe they are. Everything can be if you listen to it correctly. He pulls a cheap phone out of his pocket, one he bought with cash and no name because the name he used to bring to counters belongs to rooms that decided to hurt him for using it. He thumbs a short message to a number that belongs to an encrypted dead drop that belongs to 3 reporters and 2 civil rights lawyers and 1 man with a podcast that accidentally does more good than harm. It's not a manifesto. It's coordinates and a phrase. Sublevel 2 exists. He tosses the phone into the black between dock lights so it becomes an honest star for half a second and then a quiet rock. He stands there until the cold convinces him to move again. He moves. Rooftops again. A sliding map under his feet. He likes maps. He likes how they pretend the world fits on a pag. And then forgive you when you scribble in the margins. He'll scribble a lot before this ends. Not with speeches. With air holes. Somewhere behind him, alarms that belong to other people make other people's decisions. He doesn't check the news on a different phone. The news will do what it always does. Sprint after the loudest thing and then swear it shows the path. He made the loud thing undeniable for 10 seconds. 10 seconds is the difference between rumor and archive. He lands on one more roof and lets the city be a big animal under him, warm and half asleep, terrible and worth it. He doesn't tell it what he's going to do. He doesn't need witnesses. He already got them. He steps off into the dark and disappears like he's supposed to. Chapter 1 End. Chapter 2. Convoy job at dusk. Traffic stacks itself exactly the way he sketched it. City bus stalled at the on-ramp. 2 food trucks squeezed nose to tail. A delivery van pretending to be lost while broadcasting the world's most helpful hazard blinkers. The overpass above is a shallow bowl of sound. Every little noise sits in it for a second and then rolls away. Izuku stands on the underside scaffolding with his palms flat to cold steel, counting the rhythm of engines the way he counted guard feet. One for all hums in his bones in those tiny, precise pings that never make light shows. Black whip threads pin him to the B.M. in 3 lazy anchors so he can lean out over the lane without gravity getting ideas. The convoy nose appears past the billboard that begs people to switch carriers. Lead cruiser, prisoner transport, second cruiser. 2 escort bikes flank like exclamation points. A recon drone drifts above it all like a smug gull. 19 seconds until they chew under the bridge. 7 seconds more until the transport hits the seam he loosened. He breathes once and lets the city breathe with him. OFA taps the pavement in a ring no wider than a dinner plate, 2 centimeters below the surface. The asphalt heaves and then relaxes. A tidal shrug that becomes a rolling wave exactly when the transport's front suspension drinks it. The driver corrects like a pro. Steady hands, good training, so the transport doesn't flip. It just bows low, noses onto the merged shoulder, and kisses the divider gently enough that the airbags decide to mind their own business. The bikes overreact. Left bike clips the bus bumper. Right bike swerves into the fog line and eats grit. Both riders live. Both radios die. The drone tilts to find the threat. Izuku is already off the beam and into the shadow under the bus. He leaves 3 black whip lines clinging to bolts no one looks at. They'll matter later. Overhead, the recon drone adjusts altitude. A tiny serving of OFA flicks from his thumb to a loose bolt he persuades. Dead into existence earlier on the lamp post. The bolt drops, taps the drone's altimeter hood, and suddenly the drone trusts the wrong numbers. It dips just enough for a city bus roof antenna to kiss its belly. A minute scratch, enough to make the drone spiral for a diagnostic instead of firing. He walks out from under the bus with his hood up and his hands empty like he lives here and is late to something. The first cruiser's door swings and a gun points and a voice does the trained bark. Hands. Help, Izuku says, casual as streetlight glow. Driver's bleeding. They look where he points. He isn't lying. The driver's forehead did find the wheel. That truth buys him steps. He uses them. The transport door flashes red at his badge-less approach. He doesn't bother with the panel. He palms the hinge with black whip filament, pops the pins with 2 microburst, and pulls the door the wrong way off its own intentions. It goes quiet and obedient in his hands. Inside is a row of faces behind shielded seats. Eyes wide, tired, angry, too calm, too loud, every kind. 6 detainees. 4 are cuffed with standard restraints. 2 wear anklets that hum like prayer bowls, not standard. He doesn't give a speech. He walks the aisle, glancing at wrists, reading the little manufacturer stamp on the cuffs. He recognizes the firmware mold from the armory's visor menus. Arch-in access only sits etched in gray. He films the stamp with the cuff cam that wasn't meant to film anything but usage stats. The first detainee, teen, shaved head, wet eyes, tries to stand and finds his tether. You here to break me out? Because, like, I'm innocent, man. A snort from 3 seats down. Everybody's innocent in the bus, a woman says, mouth split in a tomato bruise. Izuku kneels by the teen, not coddling. Name, Ken. Quirk, static pull, like magnets, but rude. Flag against you says you stuck a register drawer to a wall and told it to think about what it did. Ken blinks. Yeah, that was a joke. I put it back. I'll check security footage, Izuku says. You'll sign a statement tomorrow morning. If you lie, it falls apart. If you don't, you walk. Ken stares. You're not a cop. No. The bruised woman leans forward in her tether so the plastic creaks. You wearing a hero smile or a villain smile? I need to know how much attitude to spend. I'm the guy who likes clean exits, he says. And turns to her cuffs. No Arch-in stamp. Simple electric locks. He pops them with a click, then taps the restraint bar to release the tension. She flexes her hands, winces, then low. GHS like someone found $10 on the ground. Name, he asks. Mari. Shoplifting. The shoplifted thing was bread. Be mad if you want. I'm not the bread police, he says, and nods toward the door. Stay low. Follow the lane strip. My guy in a blue beanie will feed you directions. Your guy, she says, skeptical. Technically a guy the first met 20 minutes ago who hates the commission more than me. He's loud and correct. She grins, and it makes the bruise look smaller. She goes. Seat 3 holds a man in his 30s with a calm face that feels like a suit he tailored at home. The archon anklet hums at his shin. Name: Kaoru, he says evenly. They flagged my quirk for erratic polymerization. I volunteer coached a robotics camp and now I'm here because some algorithm learned fear. You destabilize anything that breathes. No. Then you're not today's problem. Izuku slips a thin filament under the anklet casing and peels the plastic back like a dull fruit. The bored eye. End side is printed with tiny wings and a serial that matches the visor logs in his head. He doesn't rip it. He slides out the sliver that holds the Archon-Oth handshake and pockets it. He reassembles the casing and clicks it open properly. You keep that as a souvenir. Throw it in a river later. Kaoru's control cracks into a relieved smile he doesn't expect from his own face. You're stealing the key that steals keys. Borrowing, Izuku says. I'll return it to the fire. Seat 4. A wide man with the wrong kind of stare. The bigness in him isn't muscle. It's appetite. His record ticks in. The corner of the HUD because he let the visor's sideband sit under his cap like an old friend. Repeat assault. A kid in a hospital 5 weeks. The man smiles like he likes how Izuku smells. You freeing everybody? He asks. Too friendly. No, Izuku says, and doesn't break eye contact. He unlocks the man's wrist strap anyway and rebuckles it in a tighter notch. He reaches down and clicks the S. Eat tether into a deadbolt the bus doesn't advertise. You're getting due process with 3 locks and a camera. The man's smile drops like a plate. What? Slow walk for you, Izuku says. Breathe through it. Seat 5 is an older woman with hard hands and a softer glare. You gonna pick a side or just stand in the middle looking cool? I'm not a fence, he says, popping her cuffs. I'm a door, she snorts. That's worse. Doors get slammed. Still, she follows Mari. The 6th is empty. A jacket lies in the seat like the person evaporated. He doesn't like that. He likes it less when his thumb traces the cuff rail and finds dried glitter caught in the seams. The kind they use in some restraint foam to mark for later. He files that for the part of his brain that keeps receipts. Outside, sirens lean toward the overpass. The lead cruiser's driver shouts into his shoulder mic and then stops when he realizes the antenna is a fake. Izuku plants one foot on the transport step and the other outside. Ready to cut left if the drone recovers. It doesn't. Something drops it without noise. Just a tiny skip in the air, a flicker, and then the drone shivers and folds down like a bad idea that finally listened to reason. The shot's angle is too clean for luck. Izuku looks up. Rooftop. 3 buildings out. A figure crouched behind a vent with a long case and a steadiness that belongs to difficult choices made a long time ago. Lady Nagant aligns, breath invisible, barrel steady. She doesn't wave. He doesn't either. She's not here for ceremony. Midoriya. A new voice cuts in from above, and the air gets lighter by half out of habit. Hawks sails in on a carpet of feathers that seem to have 6 different jobs at once. They're already plucking hazard cones off the lane, pinning them down. Building a little traffic ballet that keeps the bus safe and the police from crashing into each other trying to be useful. Hawks glides to a standstill like the breeze put a hand on his shoulder. Shades, smile, heartbeat you could set a metronome to. Man, you picked the good hour. Golden light, this'll look great in court. I don't plan for courts, Izuku says. I plan for exits. Cute, Hawks says. He looks past Izuku into the bus, clocks the tethered predator, the freed 4, the neatness of the swaps, and whistles low. And surgical. Commission's going to write a poem about you. Hate poem, but still. Save the haiku, Izuku says. You've got 30 seconds before the commission launches a counter-narrative and 50 before this overpass becomes a state fair of bad decisions. He points at the second cruiser where a console warms up on the dash. Your friends are about to ping the anklets. Kill switch just to prove a point. I took the point out. Hawks tilts his head. You always steal the punchline. Only if it kills people. On cue, the cruiser's console throws a red bar that wants to be dramatic. Nothing happens. Kaoru looks down at his ankle, then up at the sky with a breath he didn't know he locked. Okay, Hawks says, amused despite himself. You got me curious. What's next? We tango. You slip. I chase. The internet fights about it. Izuku doesn't answer with words. He flicks a black whip line to the hazard cones Hawks isn't using and drags them into a different shape that opens a lane for a small line of cars he deliberately clogged earlier. The cars trickle through instead of boxing everything in. It looks messy. It's geometry. He leans in. Choice time. I do love a game show, Hawks says cheerfully. What are my fabulous prizes? Izuku points with his chin to the far end of the overpass where a family sedan sits with steam from a mildly abused radiator. A second drone, commission grade, the serious kind, slides out from under bridge girders and locks a bead on the sedan's license plate. You chase me, Izuku says, or you save a family who doesn't know their insurance won't cover a laser. Hawks flicks 2 feathers off his shoulder like he's brushing off dust. The feathers arrow. One slaps the drone's optics sideways. The other sticks in a seam and then does something ugly on a frequency most people can't hear. The drone coughs, loses interest in the license plate, and decides it has a dentist appointment. There, Hawks says, still looking at Izuku. Third option, save them and arrest you. Izuku tips his hat at the 4 freed civilians hugging a concrete pillar like it's a saint. You can't arrest me and shepherd them through city traffic without somebody with less training catching feelings. Are you CA? Admit you're good at triage and be good at triage. Hawks' smile thins. The problem with being the guy who saves people is he keeps choosing to save people. You're getting real practiced at putting me in corners. I'm putting us in rooms where the only door points the right way, Izuku says. That's my whole hobby now. Hawks glides closer, slow, eyes sharp above the joke. You know I'm not your enemy. I know you're not my friend, Izuku says. No heat, just fact, but you're predictable where it counts. A sharp crack snaps the air. Not a bullet. A sonic finger snap from the recon drone's replacement. Nagant solves the replacement problem with a neat, invisible line. Another drone quits. Hawk's gaze flicks rooftops, catches the glint, sighs. You really bringing her back into this? I didn't bring her anywhere. Izuku says. I show up where people deserve air. People who want to breathe find the place. For a half second there's nothing smug in Hawk's face. Just a guy who has to accept that the board is crowded and everyone knows how the pieces move. Then the easy grin is back. You're going to make me write reports with adverbs, aren't you? Bring snacks, Izuku says, and steps backward into the bus, pulling the last bolt from the seat rail of the older woman's restraint. Mari, Kaoru, Ken, down the ramp, left at the crushed cone, Blue Beanie. Blue Beanie hole. DS up 2 fingers from behind the bus where he's never not been there. The freed 3 move. The calm man with the appetite strains uselessly at his rebuckled cuffs and hisses a sentence he thinks is a threat. Izuku doesn't even look. He just speaks like he's changing a preset on a radio. You're not leaving because the city doesn't need the version of you that thinks kids are practice. Review board tomorrow. Pray they've had lunch. The man spits. It lands on his own boot. He looks like he wants to punch physics. The lead cruiser finally gets its doors sorted after tripping over Izuku's little feathery traffic sculptures. 2 officers move with that tight, offended walk of people who wanted a simple night. They see Hawks, reconsider, and reholster just enough to look cooperative. Pro-hero Hawks, one says. We secure the scene, you secure the bystanders, Hawks answers, cheerful as a game show host. Call M's for the bus driver and any detainees who stubbed a toe. If a guy in a green hoodie runs past, don't get grabbed by plot. Just breathe. The officer blinks at the word, plot, checks if it's a new code, and decides to nod instead. Hawks turns back to Izuku. You know, this is all gonna get spun around your neck. I left it too short for a noose, Izuku says. He reaches up, touches the transport's roof where a traffic cam sits dumb and patient, and feeds it a mic. Robust handshake through the visor's sideband. For 3 seconds, the camera's overlay swaps from date time to a simple green helix spiral that rotates once and freezes. He lets it hold long enough for a dozen phones to catch it. Not a threat. A tag. Cute logo, Hawks says. You start a brand. Just labeling the exits, Izuku says, and hops down. He feels the wind shift before the next drone lifts. Commission drones always arrive in 3s, one to watch, one to act, one to log. The third drone is still hidden in shadow under the bridge ribs. He would miss it if he were looking up. He isn't. He's listening to the gaps between tires and the way sound gets swallowed near the second pillar. He flicks Blackwhip to the bolt he planted into the pillar's seam. He twists. The seam opens, only a centimeter. Just enough to let the overpass breathe wrong. The air current shudders. The drone's pressure sensor reads a gust and overcompensates. It rises into the path of a passing box truck's roof rack and becomes an expensive noise. Hawks winces. The city is going to send me a bill personally. Send it to a black site, Izuku says, and nods toward the bus driver, who's starting to blink through the daze. He okay. Concussion at worst, Hawks says after a rapid feather check that somehow knows how to take a pulse. You're doing triage again, Midoriya. Do you ever stop? When the rooms stop killing the wrong people? Izuku says. So, no. Blue Beanie shepherds Mari, Kaoru, and Ken into the mouth of an alley that looks like it eats people for snacks and, tonight, is a hallway to a safe car. Ken looks back at Izuku like a kid leaving a ship he wanted to drive. Izuku tips 2 fingers. Ken grins with too many teeth and disappears. From the rooftop, a gloved hand lifts, Nagant. A minimal signal that says, "My window's done." She breaks down the rifle with a set of motions that look like a ballet the military forgot to teach anyone else. She fades out of the skyline like dusk does what it wants. Hawks catches the glance. You trust her. I trust what she does when power shows its neck. Cool line, Hawks says. Shame about the reality that she is, complicated. You're not simple, Izuku says. And I still bet on you to save the sedan. Hawks' mouth twitches. He hates losing a point and loves a clean one. Screw you for knowing me. Like I said, Izuku answers. Predictable where it counts. Sirens finally get brave and push onto the ramp. Real cops, not commissioned spooks. Civic drones hover, confused by how quiet the crisis looks compared to the call. Civilians start filming in earnest. Phones swing like worship. Izuku steps back into the slice of shadow under the bridge and counts 3 beats of traffic drum. He doesn't sprint, he just picks a seam in attention and exists somewhere else for a while. Blackwhip kisses pillar to pillar. OFA carries him in those precise arcing hops that feel like cutting corners with his whole body. Hawks doesn't follow, not because he can't, because he's busy doing the thing the city really needs while the story tries to make him do a different thing. He barks at officers, steers EMTs with feathers like flags. Gently pries an old man's white-knuckle fingers off a steering wheel, all with that easy voice that keeps people from putting their fear somewhere stupid. Izuku clears the ramp edge and lands in a miniature forest of rebar and weeds that grew a deal with each other. He breathes in the rusty plant smell and the hum of the city stitching up a little hole. He pauses long enough to see R.A.C.K. open the sliver chip he lifted from Kaoru's anklet. It's a bite of the Archon handshake. A tiny key that thinks it's holy because somebody named it after a church choir. He slots it into the visor's sideband in a move his fingers memorize only once. The HUD winks. Archon fragment partial brute on request. He doesn't brute. He copies. Sandboxes again. He doesn't want to step on a landmine when he can learn the fuse's favorite music first. Ahead, a kid in a red hoodie and a skateboard watches him with the world's worst poker face. You Spider-Man. Wrong burrow, Izuku says. You the green spiral dude. The kid whispers, delighted like hearing a rumor clap back. Green helix, Izuku corrects, because names matter when you're trying to be precise. He tosses the kid a knockoff phone like the one he drowned. Film from that bridge as you go home, then delete it when you hit your block. Tell your mom you were late because a hero made you pick up trash. I don't have. You do now, Izuku says. And points at a bag of litter at the foot of a sign that says please don't leave litter. The kid laughs, shoulders the bag, and skates off with purpose like a mission got smuggled into his night. He moves again. The overpass becomes an outline, then a memory. Ambulance lights paint the underside red for a second, and then the city decides to move on to other sirens. He takes 3 rooftops and a construction crane to get to a building nobody loves yet. On the top floor, a skeleton of an apartment holds a view of the river and a folding chair that belongs to someone who likes lunch alone. He sits for exactly 2 breaths and lines up everything in his head. The list is simple. Seraph node in Camino. Archon 01. Sarah. An access fragment in his pocket. A Kami. Sajan that just had a convoy job stolen and will overcorrect. Hawks. Complicated, but pointed the right way when it matters. Lady Nagant. Precise enough to cut a god's shoelaces. 4 freed civilians. Who will wake up tomorrow knowing, innocent until proven guilty, needs friends. He checks himself for hero posture and throws it away. He isn't performing morality. He's performing triage. The phone he drowned earlier is already a fish. This new one will be a different fish by dawn. He drafts 3 texts and schedules them with a fingertip calendar. One to the civil rights lawyer with the Cordy. Nates of a black site's back door and a reminder the hinges are cheap. One to the reporter who asks better follow-up questions than most cops. One to an unlisted number he hasn't used in a year that belongs to someone who can pull ambulances into the right parking lot without asking too many whys. He doesn't touch Ochako's contact, even though his thumb floats over it like it has its own gravity. That conversation needs air that tonight doesn't have. He stands. The sun refuses to set properly, smearing itself sideways along the river like it hates clocks. Dusk holds its breath. The cranes raise their arms like they're trying to remember a song. A shadow flinches on the next roof. Nagant is already gone, but an empty brass casing sits on the parapet like she left him a punctuation mark. He picks it up. A tiny green helix is scratched into the rim with something sharp, and below it, a single dot, period, not ellipsis. No promises. No, maybe later. Just saw you. He puts the casing in. To his pocket beside the Archon fragment. One proof of a friend who doesn't say the word. One proof of a system that wants to be a god. He drops from the parapet into the alley where a mural paints a car crash as a bouquet. He lands in the pedals and walks through steam that smells like last week's rain. He doesn't look back at the overpass. He doesn't need a victory lap. When he passes a blown traffic cam at the corner, he lifts a hand and flicks the firmware into a record loop, 10 seconds of nothing forever. It's a gift to the block. Little things count. By the time he steps onto the main road, the convoy scene is just noise farther up the artery. People are still arguing about whose lane is whose. A dog is still excited about a pigeon that refuses to be impressed. The city didn't ask him to fix it. It just tolerated the improvement. He angles toward the river and the long walk to Camino's cranes. The helix glows in the corners of too many phones now. A symbol isn't a solution. It's an arrow. Arrows are fine if they point somewhere true. He tucks his hands into his jacket and lets the night's air carry the heat off his skin. The plan nudges the back of his teeth like a word he wants to pronounce cleanly. He doesn't rehearse speeches. He rehearses angles. Chapter 2 end. Chapter 3. League Without Chains. The station used to move people. Now it moves secrets. Old tiles F. Lake under bootsteps and the departure board is stuck announcing trains that would rather be ghosts. A half-lit concourse gives the room that end of party look. Bottles in corners, confetti of shattered glass nobody danced on. Izuku drops in from a busted skylight and lands like a suggestion. No cape, no mask, hoodie, gloves, calm. He lifts his hands away from his sides so the cameras he already fooled can show the same thing the room sees. No weapon, no twitch. 5 guns come up anyway. The League doesn't do hospitality, they do paranoia with snacks. A Yakuza crew flares out on the other sea. Like they learned choreography from old movies and bad dads. Cute entrance. Dobby calls from a leaning position on a ticket counter. He looks bored, but his eyes are doing math you can smell. Blue. Fire cuts little commas in the air around his hand. Spinner stands on a duffel bag like a student council president on a crate, lizard tail twitching, jacket patched up with slogans that gave up being slogans and started being scars. Shigaraki is there, hoodie up, nails drumming, that loose shoulder walk like he never picked a spine on purpose. He scratches his neck, then stops just before skin. Like restraint is a game and he's good at it until he's not. Unarmed, Shigaraki says. Voice like a cough that learned how to make threats. Brave, stupid, or asking me to test your reflexes. 4th option, Izuku says. Busy. The Yakuza boss. Expensive watch, quiet shoes, snorts. You crash my meeting to say you have a schedule. Your meeting got crashable when you scheduled it underneath the hospital, Izuku says. Chin tipped toward the ceiling. The hospital sits right above them, weight humming through pillars. Every time someone here gets dramatic, the CT scanner hiccups. Dabi's mouth twitches. Who told you that one? Hawks. I listen to the building. Izuku glances at the guns. Point those at the columns if you're dedicated to bad endings. A half-dozen weapons lower by instinct. Then jerk back up because pride hates being tricked by physics. That's fine. He only needed the flinch to prove the room could be moved. He walks forward 3 steps, measured, the kind you practice so feet and eyes and breath say the same thing. Blackwhip hums under his skin, ready, lazy as a cat. One for all warms his bones in little pulses that would read like a heartbeat if someone put a stethoscope on the concrete. Shigaraki shifts foot to foot, restless. He wants an excuse more than he wants a plan. No speeches, Izuku says before anyone can start one. I'm not here to baptize you in a new manifesto. I'm here to trade a ceiling for a truce. Dabi laughs. We collecting metaphors now. Collecting oxygen, Izuku says. He points at a blown bulb that flickers and fails. Commission's about to tighten the city like a fist. You want to keep breathing. We cut their fingers off together for a week. After that, go back to trying to out-evil each other if it makes you feel tall. Shigaraki tilts his head. Together, he says, like we all grew up in the same trauma bonding retreat. Together, Izuku says, like grown-ups who hate the same middle manager. He lifts a cheap radio from his pocket, clicks to an open line, and lets the room hear it. Static, then a voice dry as stapled paper. Archon operations cleared for passive tracking. Seraph calibration window pending. Camino node live check in 2 hours. Repeat. Passive until green light. Spinner's tail freezes. Seraph. Nobody here likes that word, Izuku says, letting it hang. Commission is buildin'. GA Halo and it doesn't care if you pray nice. Shigaraki's fingers drum faster. He knows enough to know there are worse things than heroes with rules. You forged that feed, Dabi says, suspicious by hobby. Izuku holds the radio toward him. Dabi's flames singe the antenna just for spite. The radio keeps talking, a clipped woman's voice this time. Archon 01 status, ready. Call sign. Sarah, Maine. Troin low profile until Providence authorization. The name drops like a steel bead in a bowl. Spinner's eyes flick to Shigaraki. Providence, he mouths. Nobody answers. The word tastes like something you disagree with on principle. Izuku pockets the radio. 2 offers, he says, and the words are simple because simple survives. He holds up one finger. 1. Détente. Your people stop roughing up civilians in exchange for safe corridors and real supplies. My network shares routes, med, and a list of buildings I will personally break if you use them to stash bodies. 2nd finger. 2. Intelligence choke. The commission buys Yakuza call logs and league chatter like candy. We starve them of candy. Burn the toys that phone home. I give you a list of snitch devices and the guy who sells them to both of you. Yakuza watch checks his pulse by touching his watch. He's not used to being offered things. He's used to being told he'll kneel and then hating the person who told him. Shigaraki scratches air near his jaw again. Slow circles. And what do you get? Dabi asks. Besides my undivided attention and a lovely target on your back. Quieter nights, Izuku says. Less noise when I hit the Seraph node. Shigaraki drifts forward like gravity slid under him by mistake. You think you're a villain now, he says. You sound like one. You roll into a room and tell people how to behave. That's cute. I don't want you to behave, Izuku says, smiling like the idea deserves a thank you note. I want you to aim. You want leverage. Shigaraki flashes his palm like a magician showing it's empty, and it's not empty. Nothing about that hand is. He takes one casual step, a lazy drift that looks like a shrug, and then he's close enough that his fingers are a polite request away from a pillar. Izuku moves. No fists. No big boom. Blackwhip kisses a ceiling beam and bites the air. The line yanks his body forward on a perfect curve. 2 steps, a slide, so Shigaraki's hand brushes nothing but wind. Izuku plants one palm on Shigaraki's shoulder through cloth and drives him sideways into a clean strip of floor he already cleared with his eyes. Ground's not your friend right now, Izuku says like he's giving advice. Not an order. Pick something else. Shigaraki grins. It's not happy. It's teeth that learn to enjoy weathering. He goes low, tries to tap the floor with pinky and thumb isolated. That old cheat to make decay surgical. Izuku's heel nudges Shigaraki's wrist with mean precision, fingers skitter off harmless concrete. Izuku flows right with him so the touch never lands. They look like they've been doing this for years. Maybe they have, just with different words in their mouths. Dabi laughs again, this time for real. Oh, this is fun. 7 Yakuza try to decide if they should be offended on behalf of the meeting. Izuku turns his head without taking eyes off Shigaraki. If a bullet leaves that wall, he says, voice light, I'll pull your boss's flow. Our plan out of my pocket and light it on fire. Which floor plan? Watch asks before he can stop the question. The room looks at him like he tripped on his own tie. The one with the panic room that vents into your neighbor's noodle shop. Izuku says. Clever. Cruel. Silence says. He's right. Shigaraki pops to his feet, annoyed not at being moved but at being read. Stop parent teaching me. I'm not your dad, Izuku says. And the line lands hard on everybody for different reasons. He lets it sit. I'm the guy making sure a satellite doesn't erase your quirk while it pretends to erase crime. Spinner steps off his duffel. I want the roots, he says, low, like he's confessing ambition. I want the med. I want the list of buildings you don't want bodies in. Dabi looks over. Traitor cosplay now. I want our people to live, Spinner snaps. Then he turns to Izuku and, for once, doesn't sermon at him. What stops him, chin to Shigaraki, from shaking hands and then touching the first person who annoys him? Nothing, Izuku says. He's a grown-up. He makes his own trouble. But the corridor deals stand as long as the numbers stay down. You like dashboards. I do. We watch the curve together. Shigaraki freezes for a fraction. It's not fear. It's the surprise of being treated like a person whose choices have math attached. He hates it. He respects it. He hates that he respects it. Show me the snitch toys, he says. Izuku walks to a forgotten kiosk and flips the counter panel with a black whip edge. Inside, against gum wrappers and dust, a coin-sized puck, gray as apology. With a logo that looks like a wave pretending to be a halo. He holds it up between thumb and finger. This styro halo lives under the lip of your favorite lampposts and in your watch clasp. It piggybacks on city maintenance signals. It's listening for the way quirks affect air and noise, then guesses from there. Close enough to make prosecutors cocky. Dumb enough to get kids jailed for sneezes. Watch has the exact face of a man who recently bought a shipment of those. Dabi arches a brow. And you just found it, under a counter. You're like a raccoon. Compliment accepted, Izuku says. He flips the puck in a neat arc to Spinner, who catches it by instinct and almost drops it because reflexes. Split your phones. New SIM. New speech habits. I'll drop a list of compromised P-Mall techs on a dead drop by the old floodgate. You burn those shops to the ground, figuratively. I'll handle the rest. Nobody touches bystanders. Nobody extorts the food pantry. Nobody hits hospital routes. I don't have time for your worst habits. Shigaraki shifts his weight again, impatience in bones. You putting a collar on us. I'm putting a fence around people who don't owe you their fear, Izuku says. You want to hop it. I'm fast. He hears it before anyone else. The soft sigh of a door opening in a hallway nobody drew on the map. Steps precise, a breath measured like a marksman's. He doesn't turn because he wants the room to tell him who they think it is, and they do. Weapons relax the minimum amount you relax for a professional who isn't exactly yours. Lady Nagant walks in, from the maintenance corridor carrying a hard case like a suitcase and a promise. Her coat might as well be a uniform for the idea of decisions. She moves to Izuku's left, the lane he left open for someone he trusts to watch his blind spot. She didn't ask. She just read the space the way he reads people. Dabi's grin gets teeth. Ah, the anti-hero's hero. Nagant ignores him. She cracks the hard case. Inside, med foam, suture kit, a squat radio with a cracked dial, and 3 little discs that look like candy for a god with bad taste. She nudges the case toward Izuku without looking at it. Still soft focused on the room like she's checking wind that doesn't exist down here. You're bleeding, she says, casual, as if noticing the weather. Izuku glances down. A thread-thin scratch is drying along his forearm where Shigaraki's nail grazed cloth and not skin. He didn't register it. His body did. It complained by tightening a muscle he'll need later. Nagant shakes her head in that small way that says, "You're very clever. Also you're ridiculous," takes the foam, and seals the cut with a press and a hiss. It stings. He doesn't react. She does. One raised brow that says she noticed anyway. Shigaraki watches the intimacy like a scientist watching a chemical that wasn't supposed to mix. Spinner pretends to check the puck. Dabi pretends not to be entertained. Nagant closes the case and finally looks at Shigaraki. "Don't touch the floor while you're upset," she says like an aunt who knows the kid in the kitchen. Shigaraki bristles because he hates the accuracy. "I'm not a child." "Good," she says. "Then act like it." Dabi laughs a real laugh. Spinner's mouth curves because he likes anyone who shots calls on the guy nobody shots calls on. Watch scowls because the room is out of his hands and he's allergic to that feeling. Izuku taps the cracked radio. "You brought it." Nagant's eyes say yes. Her mouth says, it wants to be near an uplink so it can pretend it's important. "Same," Izuku says. He flips the dial, feeds it a slice of the Archon handshake sliver he stole earlier, and listens as the radio stops being a radio and starts being a peephole. A thin voice. CE speaks through static like it forgot to be human. Archon 01. Local noise suppressed. Camino calibration awaiting providence. Maintain cover. The room doesn't breathe for a beat. The commission didn't imagine this audience. Izuku lets the beat land, then flicks the radio off. He sets it in the case like it's a napkin after dinner. "Okay," he says. "Here's the paperwork you'll actually do." He slips a folded map from his pocket. Paper, not digital. Someone drew it by hand. The ink is green. Corridor arrows crawl like ivy through the city from pantry to clinic to shelter to safe kitchen. There are X's over buildings with thin windows and thick walls, the spots where people end up when power doesn't want them seen. Spinner steps forward, eyes hungry in a way that has nothing to do with food. "This is work," Izuku says. "No burning supply vans for tweets. No heat on shelters. You try to recruit inside a relief line, I come personally and throw you through a windshield. We clear." "Clear," Spinner says, too quick. So he says it again slower. "Clear." Izuku looks at watch. "Your end. You stop selling your guy's phone logs to commission cutouts. I will know. Don't test me with a sacrificial underling. I'm not playing the, oops, old man, we had a rogue captain, game with you." Watch inhales to bargain. Izuku doesn't give him the room. He flicks one finger toward the shadow under the stairwell. A tiny camera blinks, then dies under a lazy blackwhip punch. Also, fire the nephew who thought putting a cam there was smart. Watch's jaw tightens. He looks at the Yakuza at his left, who tries to not look like a nephew. Shigaraki rolls one wrist, bored of deals. "I want a thing," he says. "It's my right as a chaos gremlin, apparently." Izuku looks at him, patient. "Ask, when the sky gun points at you." Shigaraki says, almost gentle, almost curious, "And it will, I want front row. I want to see what you look like saying no to a god." "Buy a ticket," Izuku says. "You're not special. The whole city's invited." Dabi looks pleased he doesn't have to be the edgelord today. Overhead, the building reminds them there's a hospital with a heartbeat. A gurney squeaks channels through the ceiling. A squeal of a wheel with a bad day. That sound shouldn't have to compete with them. Izuku points with his chin toward the platform. "Your exit is East Tunnel. My people cleared the tripwires. You'll pass 2 murals. At the second, you'll see a green spiral and 2 dots. That means the air is good. If you see 3 dots, go home and pretend you like soup. Don't get clever and move the art." Spinner nods like he will definitely try to move the art in a different week. Dabi tosses a flame up and catches it out of the air, bored god juggling planets. "And if we decide your rules are cute and choose violence?" Izuku steps forward 2 slow steps and the room calibrates to him again without meaning to. "Not menace. Gravity. Then I pick up your leader with one hand," he says, not loud. and spend the rest of my evening putting out your fires with your face. The sentence lands. Not threat theater. Merely geometry, like he's telling them where rain goes on a sloped roof. Dabi's smirk shrinks into something with a spine. Shigaraki's fingers stop scratching. He hears the line under the line. I don't want to wreck you. Please don't make me borrow time. Nah. Gant nudges the hard case with her boot toward Izuku, then toward Spinner. The discs are blinders, she says. One-time use. Drop them on any puck and it feeds the commission weather reports for a week. Spinner whistles. Impressed against his will. Who made those? Someone who got tired, she says, not elaborating. The room translates that as someone who knows exactly how this works and decided to help instead of complain. Izuku palms one and flicks it at Watch. Watch snags it reflexively and almost fumbles. Stick it under your watch clasp, Izuku tells him. You'll all sleep better knowing when you're being tracked. Watch looks at the disc like it might bite him. Why hand us your advantage? Because I'm not hoarding safety, Izuku says. I'm distributing it like bread. Dabi snorts. Socialist villain arc. Incredible. But the fire in his palm dims all the same. Izuku breathes once. The station air smells like rain that forgot where it was supposed to go. Somewhere outside, thunder argues with the skyline. He can't stop a god tonight. He can stop a riot. Go, he says. The League moves first because they like to pretend they don't take orders while following them faster than anyone. Spinner tucks the puck and the map like talismans and leads two bodies in patched jackets toward the platform, eyes wide open in a way that means he will memorize the corridor with monastic fury. Dabi saunters because PR is a hobby. Shigaraki drifts with that unwalk you get when your center of gravity is exactly 1 inch to the left of normal. At the stairs, Shigaraki glances back. You sure you're not a hero? I'm sure I'm not a liar, Izuku says. Shigaraki laughs, short and bright as a match. Fair. The Yakuza crew hesitates until Watch lifts his wrist and clicks the disc under the clasp. He looks at Izuku like a man approaching a deal with a tiger and a conscience. If the commission offers more than fear later, he says, testing, what stops me from selling you out? You're welcome to try, Izuku says, but your nephew's car insurance will hate the week that follows. He smiles, small and mean. Watch gets it. They file out. The station breathes again, a different animal now that it's not crowded with teeth. Silence returns like a friend who forgot his keys and pretends he meant to. Nagant leans her shoulder against a pillar in the exact spot where touching doesn't matter. She looks at Izuku's forearm to see if the foam seal held. It did. You're getting bolder, she says, not a complaint, not a compliment. I'm getting scheduled, he says. Seraph calibrates in 2 hours. You're going to Camino, she says. Not a question. I'd like a sniper who doesn't miss, he says. Also not a question. She smirks, which on her face is half an exhale. You're allergic to gratitude. I'm allergic to speeches, he says, and they both accept that counts. He picks up the cracked radio and turns the dial one more time, low volume, ear close. Static. A whisper like a wire pulled tight. Archon 01 Sarah. Stand by. He kills the feed, pockets the radio, and looks at the departure board still frozen on trains that will never arrive. He doesn't wait for symbolism to try something. He turns to the stairwell and starts up. Nagant falls in 2 steps behind, quiet as certainty. Halfway up, he stops and looks back at the empty concourse. Hey, he says to the room, which is the same thing as saying it to himself. Less noise. The lights don't answer. The hospital does. A squeak, a metal sigh, a clatter of someone saving somebody else with their hands. Small choir. Good enough. He surfaces into rain that doesn't know he's coming and heads toward cranes that will. The map in his head redraws with his footfalls. Routes, corridors, rooms that used to be cages, now turned into hallways. Behind him, on the kiosk where the puck sat, he leaves a thin green spiral drawn with a dry erase marker he didn't have a second ago. No message. People will put messages on it. They always do. The wind flips his hood up and he lets it. Night is honest. Streets will either help or they won't. He can work with either. At the block's edge, a kid-eye. N.A. Poncho lifts a phone to film the new spiral, then looks around, sheepish, and tucks the phone away without being told. The city learns. It stumbles. It stands. It keeps moving. So, Nagant says, matching his stride. Voice tucked under rain. What do you want me to shoot first? The thing that thinks it's God, Izuku says. Or the rope it pulled taut around the city. Whichever gives me the better angle. She nods. The kind of nod you give your own decision. They walk. No fanfare. No heavy epiphany music. Just two people and weather and a timetable they didn't write but definitely intend to ruin. Chapter 3 End. Chapter 4. Halo over Camino. Steel sings when storms roll in. Camino's cranes hum with it, old bones remembering how to lift ships, not secrets. Lightning stitches sky to river and the whole ward flinches. Good cover. Bad omen. Either way, Izuku takes it. He is 3 stories up on a catwalk that forgot handrails, rain stitching his sleeves to his skin. Black whip Ancho. RS in 3 quiet lines, one to a rusted girder, one to a bent hook, one to a bolt he kissed loose an hour ago so it would feel familiar now. Nagant crouches on the shadowed gantry across from him, rifle folded to half length. Eyes doing that soft focus thing where the world arranges itself into ranges and exits. Window in 20, she murmurs. He doesn't hear it so much as read it off her mouth. The wind's doing union work, trying to drown everything out. Down on the docks, men in commission gray pretend to be longshore. They're bad at the pretending. Boots too new, postures too bright. A generator coughs under tarp. Over the seam of 2 warehouses, an antenna array ticks in slow angles. He doesn't need the visor to know the name stitched on that invisible thread, Seraph. Lightning flash. 1, 2, thunder. He times breath to the count, rolls one for all into the soles of his feet in little patient pulses that never push past his skin. He will need the big stuff. Just not yet. Naga. NT taps a tether piton into steel with a single knuckle. No sound. He grins at the trick and gets a side eye that says focus, which he does, and the grin turns into breath. Sarah. She signs with 2 fingers and a question mark. Ready. He signs back. Providence, maybe watching. She answers with a little twist of her wrist that means fine, let them watch. He drops from the catwalk on a slack line, boots kissing rung, air. The storm throws a sheet of rain so thick the dock lights give up. He lands behind a stack of pallets and counts the footfalls of the closest gray coat. 7-second patrol loop. He's bored with his own route. Bored men make beautiful mistakes. Izuku walks into the patrol's blind spot like he's a draft, not a person. 2 fingers tap the man's elbow joint, polite nudge. The kind that folds someone without making them a story. The man's knees unlock. Izuku catches him by the collar and sets him down like a box of glass. He plucks the badge and leaves the body breathing. A radio chirps. Archon 01 on approach. Keep the lane clear. Nagant's reticle finds the speaker without Izuku asking. She peels the radio off the man's vest with a single long shot. She pierces the clip and pins it to the pallet. The speaker makes a damp complaint and dies. Show off, Izuku mouths. She shrugs, mouth tugging. The rain smears it into almost a smile. He skims the warehouse wall. Every step a quiet decision. The service door recognizes the badge, then doesn't, then decides to be helpful after he strokes the latch with a timed OFA pulse. Inside smells like warm electronics and bitter coffee. A floor vent sighs. It's pulling heat up from a belly full of machines. On a folding table, someone left a half-eaten sandwich with mustard that made a brave stand and then retreated. He isn't here to judge condiments. The access node sits in a cage of aluminum with neat little warnings that want to sound holier than boldface. Archon auth only. He flexes the visor on. Feeds it the stolen fragment from Kauru's anklet, and listens while code pretends to be sacred. The sideband handshake fits a little too well. The HUD blinks. Archon 01. Sarah, handshake accepted, limited. Under it. Ground key, Camino West. He could clone now, he could run. He doesn't get the luxury. The storm hands him a clock and the sky promises an audience. Midoriya, a voice says over the building speakers. Clipped consonants, exact vowels. Not Saren. This one has field dust on it. You are 1 floor from a fatal mistake. Leave. He looks up at the camera bubble in the corner and tips 2 fingers. Trying something new. Polite theft. You do not understand the system you're touching. I understand the people you're pointing it at. He pops the cage lock with a black whip thread so thin it's almost a suggestion. The lock size open. The node hums in a balanced chord. His fingers slide the ground key out like he's removing a thorn from a dog's paw. Archon 01 inbound, the voice replies. Ignoring him the way a plane ignores weather, professionally, with contempt. Stand clear. He pockets the key. The lights change shade. Outside, the rain brightens like someone put a filter on the world. He doesn't need to see the descent to feel it. Air pushed aside by something that thinks gravity is a suggestion. He runs. Not sprint. Efficient glide, feet barely owning the ground. He clears the door, tucks left. And the sky opens. Sarah arrives like a verdict with no narration. She doesn't pose. She simply is, descending on a disk of light that pretends to be solid long enough to convince steel. Armor isn't the right word. Her suit is geometry. Shoulders drawn in a line that says, no wasted motion, helmet a dim halo rim whose glow is math, not mysticism. The air around her bends. You don't see it unless you know what to look for. He does. She floats within voice distance, which is almost kind. Midoriya Izuku. He shouldn't know her voice, but the world is small when people try to make it big. Sarah. He answers. Archon 01. Return the ground key. Ask nicer. He says. A beat like disappointment meant for a cathedral. You cannot win a duel with a network. I'm not dueling, he says. I'm editing. She opens her hand. The halo around her flares in a soft corona. Rain thins near her, not because it evaporates, because it gets convinced to fall elsewhere. Kinetic conversion field, tuned to steer energy, not merely swallow it. He has the shape now. He will earn the details. He steps toward the waterline because it's the only place in the yard that won't break in interesting ways. She glides parallel, matching distance like a dance partner with boundaries. Behind them, gray coats take pictures with their eyes and forget to breathe. Nagant S. Hifts to a new nest along the high crane arm, rain slicking her jacket into shadow. Her finger kisses trigger, no shot. She's measuring the halo's edge. She waits for the 2 beats the rifle needs most, patience and air. Sarah's first shot isn't a shot. She flexes the halo around her left forearm and pushes. The air becomes a palm heel of light. It hits him in the ribs hard enough to make a lesser man's bones sign out. He meets it with a half step and a quarter turn that turns impact into slide. The push scatters into the river in a sheet. A wave topples with a surprised hiss. He files the vector. Force becomes glow becomes direction. He laughs, small and real. Pretty. Predictable, she replies. She peels the second push into 3. He reads them as if they have subtitles. High, body, knee. He answers with 2 OFA ticks and a black whip ankle drag that shortens his height without surrendering it. The high pass hums over his hair and makes it forget which way it wants to live. The bod, Y strike rides his pivot and spends itself on air. The knee strike clips black whip instead of tendon and throws a spark that tries to be a star and dies in the rain. Statistically inevitable, Sarah says. The engine exists because of you. Quote, he hates being somebody's justification. He'd hate it more if she were wrong. Then it failed already, he says, and attacks. He doesn't go for big. Big makes the halo feel useful. He moves with staccato malice. 1 knuckle ofa at the ribs of her field, 1 toe burst to change the floor under both of them, 1 palm tap that's more question than strike. Her halo takes all 3 in size light. He sees the logic as it blooms. The field subsists on deltas. It drinks change. Continuous force becomes glow. Pauses starve it. He gives it a feast of crumbs, not a banquet. He speeds up the crumbs. The halo brightens and then flickers at the edge. There's a threshold where conversion lags by a breath length. Less a gap, more a blink. He doesn't have numbers yet. He has music. He taps his foot on the beat he wants. Providence, Sarah says lightly, as if into his ear, and he knows she's on a second line that he just isn't invited to. Target live. Field reading dynamic vectors. Requesting adaptation window. Denied. A colder voice answers from nothing. Providence. Static God. Contain without spectacle. Sarah doesn't sigh. She pushes. He answer. S with a line of black whip that cuts low, tries to snag the disc she rides. The field turns rope to ribbon to rain. He rolls under the shattered stream, not bothered. It told him what he needed. The floor isn't sacred. The disc is fiction. The halo can choose planes to lie upon or refuse them. The trick will be to make it say yes to something small and say it too slowly. Left crane, Nagant Whis. Hers on the bone mic, they never sink because they don't need to. He glances and she points with the angle of her elbow, not her hand. A dangling hook sways 30 meters up, a steel comma waiting for a sentence. He nods. He sprints. Sarah moves to cut him off, halo flaring a no that tastes like angelic spreadsheet. He cuts inside with a shape he stole from soccer practice years ago and never thought would save a city. The halo brushes his shoulder and turns kinetic to heat to light, tickling his skin with someone else's faith. He hates the crisp smell it leaves. He loves the data. He runs up the crane's brace, not dramatic, not showboating, just efficient steps where boots trust steel. The hook swings, rain pings off chain, the storm writes punctuation. Sarah tracks him, her disc gliding to match altitude. She's careful not to nosedive through the cranes and cut a dock worker under the roof. He learns that about her and tucks it into a drawer labeled, leverage later. He reaches the hook. The chain groans. Blackwhip wraps it with the kind of loop sailors teach their kids and he yanks. The hook jerks toward Sarah's halo like he's ringing a bell. The field doesn't like the blunt metal. It tries to shunt the energy sideways. That buys him the blink he wanted. He threads a filament of blackwhip through the shimmering seam and pulls himself past the field's cheek. He's in her air. She rotates without panic because panic is a civilian luxury and she's not that. He sees himself reflected dimly in her visor, hood up, eyes steady, a guy who left manners in his pocket when the sky pulled a weapon. He hits the halo with 5 whispers instead of 1 shout, fingertip flicks of OFA at 5 different points. You'd miss them if you blinked, which is exactly the point. The field blooms, brightens, lags. He palms her shoulder plate at the exact wrong time for her and the exact right time for him. The touch is almost kind. Then he drives. The halo hiccups. The push back comes late and wrong, sliding instead of striking. He rides it like a waiter holding a tray through a crowded club, hips first, then feet, then hands. He steals as much momentum as he can and spends it on moving her, not hurting her. Sarah bristles. Not fear, just the surprise of a model missing a variable. She flows sideways across rain and recovers in one glide. He follows. They ricochet along the crane like umper cars played by professionals who hate noise. Leave the key, she says, calm as rain. Live another hour. That's not a ratio I like, he says, and here's the real offer inside it. She's not here to kill him. Not yet. The engine wants a reading on the inevitability. The myth needs graphs. He grins at her like they share a private joke. Everyone here thinks they're collecting data. He would be more afraid if he hadn't decided to be more annoying. She pushes a flat wave. He doesn't jump it. He bites it, leans into it with an OFA shoulder bump that turns wall into handrail. The wave lifts him. He lets it give him height. Then flips into its wake and drops behind her like a sentence she didn't proofread. He snaps blackwhip to the crane's counterweight and slingshots. The sling isn't theater. It's math. It drags him through the halo at the blink again. He brushes the disc with his shoe, enough to confirm there's no disc, just light, and plants one boot on the rim of nothing for a borrowed microsecond. His knee says rude words. He doesn't respond. He keeps moving. Nagant picks her shot, not at Sarah, at the UPS inverter panel on the mast above her. An ugly beige rectangle labeled with a faded maintenance sticker. The bullet taps the panel and the panel spits a shower of sparks like someone shook a fireworks box. The halo drinks the sparks without thinking about it. The conversion has to go somewhere. For that blink, it's busy eating glitter. Izuku takes the blink and shoves his fist through it, not to shatter, but to tag a node on her left hip where field coils hum like bees. OFA kiss. Nothing more. The coil stutters. The halo shrinks by a hair. Sarah's head tilts. She doesn't like being seen. You are not a villain, she says, almost curious, like saying it will change something. Villains do not protect the dock workers while they steal government property. I'm meticulous, he says. It reads like kindness if you squint. Over the water, a deeper glow wakes, clouds blanching. A circle trying to decide if the world asked for it. Providence rises in the voice line like a slow, old elevator. Archon 01. Close the loop. Ground key retrieval mandatory. Orbital calibration in 90 seconds. Copy. Sarah says, and for the first time he hears strain. Not fear. Bandwidth. He puts himself between her and the orb glow with a simple step and a choice to be in the way forever. The rain makes a curtain between them. The halo turns that curtain aside. He misses the feel of rain on his face for half a heartbeat and then decides he can have it later. She throws a lance of pressure this time, narrow. Fast, aimed at his center of gravity. He accepts it with a body turn and lets it skim his ribs. It scrapes a bruise that will complain tomorrow. Today, it is a postcard from a friend. Wish you were here. He blows a small OFA from his heel into the dock plank and splits it in a neat seam that makes her disc tilt to avoid the splash. He hates the tilt. He loves that she loves not hurting bystanders. He grinds leverage out of that mercy. Lightning cracks close enough to count hair. On the far end of the yard, a new player arrives with zero subtle, zero patience, and perfect timing. Mirko comes in like a grin with legs. She doesn't ask the scene for consent. She just exists, and the scene rearranges itself to fit. She bounces off a container, hunts a drone like it insulted her taste in music, and lands grin first. Yo, Green, she yells over the storm. You leave any for me. Take the drones, he calls back, eyes never leaving Sarah. Leave the god. Boring, she declares, and then proves she isn't by kicking another drone so hard it hits hypothetical. Feathers of broken carbon flutter into the river and the river decides to be fashionable about it. Sarah recalculates. Her halo splits into two lobes, one for Izuku, one for Mirko, because she can't risk the rabbit hero's friendly collateral. Providence grates in her ear. Archon 01, maintain primary. Non-essential hero presence, ignore. Mirko squints up at Sarah and makes a face that says she wants to punch the word, non-essential. She kicks a crate into place to block a path that would have funneled bystanders. The dock workers down the way keep their heads down and their prayers up. The storm doesn't answer, which is fair. Izuku stops feeding crumbs. He gives the halo a lie. He charges a bigger OFA pull in his chest, lets it bloom into his arm, and shows the field his shoulder like a dog offering a decoy hand. The halo wakes to that delicious change. Every instinct says it will drink. He slates the burst at the last second into his heel instead, slipping past Sarah's left where the hip coil stuttered. He pops the coil with a two-finger jab. Nothing for a person, a headache for a field. The halo drops a centimeter. Nagant threads a shot between two bolts of lightning, and nothing that should matter, a little plastic stanchion on the crane's safety light. It explodes into harmless shards. The halo lunges to shepherd the fragments aside so nobody eats plastic confetti. Another blink. Izuku drives in 3 taps. Hip coil again, shoulder coil, back plate seam. Tap tap tap. No flourish. A mechanic's rhythm. Providence, Sarah says, not so calm now. Field efficiency at 81. Recommend adaptation tier 2. Denied, Providence says, as if he can deny physics by memo. Do not escalate. Sarah's shoulder lifts by a degree. She hates orders that don't match reality. He sees that. He likes her more for it. He hates that he likes her. He catalogs it faux. Later when he decides how to talk to her the next time a god gives her a script. He steps back 2 paces, breathing even. He lets the rain own him again and gets petty satisfaction out of how alive it feels. Mirko dropkicks a drone into a tarp with a laugh that would make a choir swear. Nagant switches nests again. The shot lanes she wants don't exist yet, so she makes them with patience and angles. Sarah shifts. This ends with you in a cell, she says. You are not special. You are a data point. Cool, he says. Here's the part where the data point curves your line. He sprints at her, like a bad idea, and goes low at the last moment, throwing himself into a slide that would break knees if he were anybody else. The halo brushes his back and converts kinetic into a pretty dawn along the slick dock. He rides the light, steals its vector, and pops up inside her perimeter with his palm flat to her chest plate. Not a punch, not a shove, a press that says I see you, not your machine. She reflexively tries to push through him without hitting him. The halo converts, Nothing. He doesn't give it change. He gives it steady. The halo starves for a breath. In that starving, her disc wobbles. He steps aside and lets gravity whisper the part it's been waiting to play. Sarah drops half a meter, catches herself, fury absent but precision offended. He could capitalize and doesn't. He isn't trying to break her. He's trying to steal her homework. Return the key, she says again, quieter, something human edging the syllables. It's not a plea. It's a request made by somebody who rarely asks. He taps his chest. I'll bring it back if you resign. Cute, she says. The halo brightens. She's done talking. Above, the cloud circle hardens. The air tastes metal sharp. Providence speaks like a weather report with teeth. Calibration window open. Ground node status. Sarah's gaze goes to the warehouse, a single lean in her helmet's angle. Izuku follows that gaze and lets it tell him where the backup port lives. He hates how much he understands them. He loves that it helps him. He moves toward the warehouse. Sarah moves to body him. Mirko decides this is boring and throws herself onto a drone cluster the size of a closet, laughing like she owes nothing to anyone. The cluster cries and explodes into obedient parts. A gray coat yells, "My budget," and then pretends he didn't. Nag. Ant Exhale clicks a shot into another inverter and then takes the rifle down entirely and begins moving in the open, her case in one hand, her other free. She knows what he's going to ask before he asks it. Left door, he says over the rain, and she's already on it, picking the hinge with a bit of wire and a worse mood. Inside, the backup ground port glows smug. The ground key in his pocket hums like it misses home. He hates to break hearts, but here we are. Sarah swings in, halo hot enough to dry a hairline. Izuku is between her and the rack before the air can decide if that's wise. She throws a narrow pulse, banking it off a steel stanchion to avoid hitting him full. Again, that humane math. He catches the angle and converts it to a lean into the rack. His shoulder protests. The port trembles. The plug connector shakes loose a millimeter. That's enough. He rips the entire faceplate off with a black whip cry and throws it into a trash can like he's tired of the decor. Providence, Sarah says. Ground node compromised. Recalibrate via secondary. Proceed. Providence answers, and the ceiling hum changes tone from considering to hungry. Mirko barrels through the door like joy on legs, panting, eyes bright. Sky's doing a thing. We hitting the thing. Not yet, Izuku says. We're teaching the thing humility. She grins too wide. I hate humility. But for you, maybe. Sarah gestures, and for the first time, he sees the halo compress into a line. Fine, surgical, more scalpel than shield. She sends it toward the ground key pouch at his jacket seam. He doesn't block. He zips the pouch closed in the same motion, flips the key to his other hand out of sight, and tosses the empty pouch like a magician's scarf. The line slices cloth and sighs out. She knows he didn't give it up. She hates that she knows. Why are you like this? She asks, baffled without sounding it. Because someone has to be, he says. Lightning drops a white curtain. Through it, a satellite eye opens wider. The ward stops being night and becomes interrogation. Providence lowers his voice until it's almost pious. Archon 01, stand down. Orbital calibration firing in 5. Izuku steps into the door frame, plants his feet, and looks up into the light. Not a dare, a geometry problem. 3. Providence intones. Mirko bounces on her soles like a boxer who likes their job too much. Nag. Ant's hand finds the bridge's anchor cable with ease. She loops and cinches it into a shape that will hold a thing heavier than pride. 2. Sarah lifts her halo and points it not at him but up, into the beam. To try and bend it away from the densest part of the dock. She's good. He respects the choice. He hates what it costs her. 1. The sky drops a line. He moves before the line decides where it's going to live. OFA roars not like a roar but like a symphony punched through a trumpet. He detonates under his own feet, point blank, palms down, turning all his stored change into a mirror that says, not here. The beam hits his burst and smears sideways, slides across the yard, and carves a perfect hot trench through 7 meters of empty air and absolutely nothing else because everyone decent moved when he asked them to 20 minutes ago. Pain spikes up his bones like a band you liked before they sold out. He doesn't shout. He grins at the hurt because it implies the math worked. The beam sputters out. The sky blinks. Offended. Providence sounds smaller when he speaks next, which is petty and satisfying. Abort. Adapt. Archive. Sarah lands hard enough to dent steel and doesn't. The halo kisses the ground and refuses to be kinetic. She straightens. Enough, she says. Agreed, Izuku says, and means it. He's not here to preen. He flicks the ruined faceplate to her feet. This one's done, he says. Tell Providence to go write a new memo. She looks at the trench he redirected, at the men who lived because he was inconvenient, at the key he didn't surrender, at the coil he bruised on her hip. Her helmet hides her eyes. He doesn't need them to guess. You cannot win, she says, but the line is thinner than it was. I'm not trying to, he says. I'm trying to make it obvious that you shouldn't help them. Mirko snorts. He thinks speeches work if he keeps them under a tweet. Nagant gives Mirko a look like please don't encourage him and also please keep being yourself forever. Outside, sirens check their watches and decide to be late. The rain remembers to be rain again. Dock workers peep from safe corners and count heads with hands because clipboard. Got sorted into other priorities tonight. Sarah lifts her chin. Next time, she says. Bring better orders, he answers. She ascends, halo muffling rain. The disk pretends solid one last time as if to reassure physics it's not being cheated. She leaves a taste of ozone and annoyance. He watches her go until she's a brighter gray in a gray sky. Mirko stretches like a cat that won a fight. So, noodles. Later, he says. Now, she counters, bouncing to punctuate it. Or I start suplexing cranes for dessert. Nagant clicks her case shut and slings it. He can eat. Then we plan. He looks at them and nods. Not a team. Not a team. A shape the city can use. He palms the ground key and weighs it. Heavy. He hates the weight. He loves that it's not in the rack. He tucks it away. Hey, leave the warehouse the way good trouble leaves places. Quieter than they found it. Mess in the parts that deserved it. Exits obvious. He pauses in the doorway and thumbs a green helix onto the jam with a marker that survives weather. People will see it tomorrow and argue about what it means. Meanwhile, ambulances will turn into the right lot more often. Meanwhile, a sky gun will have to check K itself twice before it fires at the wrong block. They step into rain. Mirko throws an arm around both their shoulders without asking and gets a glare from Nagant that she ignores and a side bump from Izuku that means, fine. But don't make it a habit. She grins wider. She's already made it a habit. Lightning chooses somewhere else to be dramatic. Cranes hold their arms up like tired saints. He breathes that post-storm iron and thinks about the line Sarah drew in the air, and the one he drew under it. He doesn't add a vowel. He doesn't need to. He's busy. Chapter 4 end. Chapter 5. Truth at street level. Music leaks out of the gala like it owes the city an apology. Velvet rope. Glass walls. An MC pronouncing. Community. The stage lights work too hard to convince everyone they're safe. Izuku's already in the feed truck. No costume. No speech. Hoodie up. Cap low. Hands clean. He kneels in a nest of cables while the techs argue about B-roll. One slips outside to smoke. Another CKS her phone and swears at a late babysitter. The third never looks up because the audio levels are flirting with peak and he loves that drama more than his job. Izuku plugs a little black wafer into an open port and breathes once. The monitor hiccups. The MC's smile lags into a green helix that spins once like a coin and stops. 10 seconds. He promised himself that limit. Proof, not pageantry. Name's Midoriya Izuku, he says to 60 cameras in a city of habits. Calm, friendly, like he's asking a clerk if they sell tape. Here's your laundry. He reads 5 names a human can verify in under an hour. He reads 5 sublevels and the 2-letter codes they use to hide budgets. He reads coordinates by intersections in a hospital wing that keeps renovating without ever finishing the job. He doesn't accuse. He doesn't editorialize. He puts receipts in the window and lets the clerk behind the glass look down and see their own handwriting. 10 seconds ends. The helix dissolves. The MC returns mid-sentence. Voice wobbling. Smile swinging like a loose sign in wind. The crowd wants to clap at the wrong time and realizes it. Someone laughs high and then pretends the laugh belongs to someone else. Izuku's gone before the techs decide whether to be offended or scared. He's already 3 blocks away, hood down, jacket damp, heartbeat slow. Sirens sniff the air, people's phones learn how to argue. City feeds split, half roll with the clip, half paint grain on it until it looks like a rumor that thinks it's important. Commission alts push out a graphic in 30 seconds, deepfake alert. A blue checkmark calls him a foreign agent. A gray checkmark says, developing story, and parks on a couch. He keeps walking. An alley blooms into a fight. 3 guys in black jackets have a man pinned to a wall by his collar. The man's suit says, contractor. The bruises say, wrong time. A camera shakes close, breath loud, narration already rehearsing, citizen justice. Izuku doesn't shout. He walks into the frame like he's late for a bus and puts one hand against the contractor's chest. Steady, still, permission asked and given, and the other flat to the nearest black jacket's shoulder. Stop, he says. The word is ordinary. The way the word is placed is not. It lands in the space where adrenaline was about to become a choice. All 3 men hesitate out of habit. They've met teachers, nurses. Someone's uncle, someone's you, who used that tone before a dumb idea stuck. He peels the fingers off the contractor's collar like tape. He's a cog, he tells the crowd. Cogs spin. You want to break machines. Pull the belt, not the bolt. Black jacket number 2's mouth goes stubborn. He knew. Maybe, Izuku says. So put him on camera tomorrow when he knows fear of perjury more than fear of you. That's how you get receipts. Not by breaking your hand on the wrong jaw. The contractor shakes, ugly, real. He looks like a kid who cheated on a test and got caught by a nicer teacher than he deserved. Go home, Izuku says, not to the contractor, but to the choice in 3 strangers who wanted to be righteous for a minute and almost did a wrong thing they would regret too long. He moves them with his hands, nothing violent. They let him. They hate that they let him. They're grateful they let him. He points down the alley. Food pantry needs someone big eno. To lift crates and small enough to take orders. Be that. Black jacket number 2 snorts like a reflex. Then he goes. The others follow because herd instincts aren't always stupid. The contractor sags. Izuku fixes his collar and gives it a little pat like he's pinning a note that reads try harder. Get a lawyer, he says. Not the one your supervisor recommends. And don't touch your work laptop. He moves. Across the city. The 5 addresses hit the news like pennies in glass. Reporters show up in pairs at 2 of them and push cameras toward doors someone painted the same beige and security likes. One door gives. Another doesn't. A third belches out a team with no patches and plenty of opinions. Crowd noise rises. The sky leans down to listen. A brick goes up somewhere. A different. T-hand catches that brick before the arc reaches a window. Izuku doesn't need to see it to know that trick. One of his people. He put the map in motion weeks ago. Where to stand, where to breathe, who to talk to first. This is what he means by exits. He takes the long route toward the hospital, not the one over the station where he made deals earlier, a different one with a cracked mural of an angel missing a wing. Rain freckled into dust. The air smells like metal and nerves. Nagant falls into step from a shadow like the shadow owed her money. She's in a civilian jacket somehow more invisible than gray. Her eyes do that scout heavy lift. 3 corners, 2 rooftops, a kid on a bike, a cop who wishes he'd called in sick. You made it loud, she says. It needed witnesses, he says. She passes him a band of fabric without making a show, white with a thin green line through the center. A cheap wrist wrap. Your corridor crews are wearing these tonight. Hard to fake if you haven't seen one. Harder to keep if you act stupid. Quote. He loops it once around his wrist and tucks the knot where the rain won't brag about it. Where first? She asks. He tilts his head. He doesn't add. B. Because I heard a hum under the station floor earlier that sounded like someone lying with a brick in their throat. He doesn't have to. She nods like she heard the same hum. The hospital curb is a movie set. Cameras. Umbrellas. A guy who calls himself an influencer and tries to get the angle. Security guards are losing a war against optics. Two commission vans pretend to be maintenance and stink of too many radios. A pop cracks the air behind the ambulance bay. Not glass. Not a gun. A shaped pop that knows walls. Nagant looks at him. He looks at her. They move. They cut through the staff. Entrance like they're late for night shift. A nurse almost stops them, reads the way they move, and decides not to. Down a stairwell that smells like borrowed bleach. Left into a corridor where the paint is new for no reason beyond guilt. The renovation wing lies to their faces. Blocked door, caution tape, more tape, makeshift dignity. Izuku touches the wall. Cool, then wrong warm at a seam. Under his fingers, something small ticks like a little clock that thinks it's important. He slides a black whip thread under the baseboard and fishes high. The thread kisses plastic, then a wire. He doesn't yank. He follows. The wire leads to a lump that wants to be a fuse. It also wants to be a message. Bomb, Nagant says, gentle, as if the wall is a child about to do something unwise. Staged, Izuku says. Too clean. Meant to make a point on live TV. Point about who? The kind of villain I won't be. He palms the device like a friend he doesn't like and feeds it the dumbest OFA he has. No heat, no thunder. Just a hiccup of energy that tells a petty circuit to take a nap and think about its life. The ticking stops. The explosive sigh. He disarms 3 more the same way, faster each time. Because repetition is a kindness when it's competence. From upstairs, a rolling shutter. Not the bomb. A crowd pushing glass. Wrong crowd. He hears that too often lately. People trying to help with fists. De-escalate, Nagant says. Tag in, he says. In the waiting room, heat and fear have made a soup. 2 guys are yelling at a nurse who has been awake long enough to learn new grammar. A dude in a high-vis vest is convincing himself a chair is a weapon. A camera catches ratios instead of faces and tries to narrate conclusions. Izuku walks through the door the way a conductor walks onto a stage when the orchestra already knows the piece. He doesn't raise his hands. He raises a silence. Hey, he says, like the word has an elbow he can lean on. No one here is your enemy tonight. The 2 yellers pivot on him. Grateful for a new villain. You the spiral guy. One demands, spit bright, eyes bright, adrenalized to the gills. Green helix, Izuku says. But right now I'm the line on the floor. He walks between the nurse and the chair, steps in front of the nurse until she can breathe, and looks at the guy with the chair like they're deciding together where the chair should lie. He taps the floor with his toe. Set that there. Pick it back up if someone asks you to sit. The chair guy blinks, trapped between orders that don't insult him and a story he wanted to post. He sets the chair down. He hates that it feels like relief. Turn your phones to the door, Izuku tells the rest. Film who comes in and out. Don't film faces of patients. Blame me later when the comments whine. For tonight, be decent or go outside and audition for a different show. The nurse's breath wanders back into her chest. She gives him a look that is 60% gratitude and 40%. If you disappear now I will personally come find you. He nods tiny. He won't. Security will say later that the crowd calmed because the spiral guy glared. They will be wrong. The crow decalmed because he handed them a job better than breaking things. He leaves Nagant at the door with a glance. She takes station like she was born to make threshold decisions, eyes flicking hands, posture loose. Everything about her communicating. Do not bring your dumb in here. He slips back into the stairwell. The influencer from the curb recognizes him and freezes with a little gasp like he saw a ghost at a vending machine. You want content? Izuku asks him softly, passing. Go stream the blood drive downstairs. The kid blinks and actually does it. Miracles from small verbs. He cuts through a back corridor toward the loading dock where the commission vans sit pretending to be on break. A guy with a clipboard of lies tries to block him with a sentence about authorized personnel. And ends up with no breath when Izuku uses exactly 2 fingers and the clipboard's weight against his center of gravity. Izuku puts him on a crate and parks him there like a misdelivered package. The van door slides. Inside, cases with styro halo pucks, a suitcase with a badge reader that thinks names are sacrament, and a stack of bland blue jackets turned inside out so someone can walk past cameras and interesting. He takes one puck. He takes the badge reader. He closes the van door and writes Helix owes you a thank you in dust with a finger. No one reads it. He keeps himself entertained. Alley. The night leans in. He turns a corner into a slice of blue. Not police. Filtered streetlight off a blade. Stain waits like a punctuation mark the city forgot to put at the end of a sentence. His scarf is a tired red. His eyes are the sober kind of crazy. Blood and rain make a thin slurry at his boots. He hasn't had to kill anyone tonight to have teeth in the conversation. He brought those with him. You're late to your own turning point, Stain says. Not mockery. Statement. I was busy not letting a hospital be a symbol, Izuku says. Stain's mouth tilts. Good line. They stand in the alley with the breath of the city and the drip 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 of a leak that will never be fixed. No crowd. No cameras. Just two men who hate different lies. Stain tips his head at the helix wrap on Izuku's wrist. You choose a flag. I chose a door, Izuku says. And who do you keep out? People who think safety demands survival tests, he says. People who write algorithms and call them God. People who like cages more than they like confessions. Stain shifts his weight. The blade slides out of habit and not malice. Where's your line? No engineered extinctions, Izuku says. No drama, no sermon. Not for safety. Not for order. Not for pencils and clipboards. If saving people means erasing what they are, we're not saving them. Stain's eyes crinkle like the emotion he avoids almost asked to drive. He nods, once. Then he tests it. He slashes fast at Izuku's forearm. Not deep. Not, murder you. Just, make you bleed. To see what your body does while your mouth is brave. Izuku moves tight and mean. He pivots wrist to wrist so the blade passes an inch from skin and becomes a line in rain. He taps Stain's forearm with two knuckles. Rude, not cruel. Stain grins because truth landed first and technique landed second. I hate that you make me like you, Stain says. You like me because I don't need you to like me, Izuku says. And because I don't call people heroes for wearing laundry. Stain barks a laugh. Ah, incorrigible. They circle once because their bodies still speak a language nobody else signs right. Stain lunges, then halts just shy of a nerve strike because this isn't that night. Izuku answers with footwork that steals space and returns it improved. All right, Stain says finally, stepping back. Go do your surgery, little surgeon. But if you start cutting the wrong flesh, I will take your hands. Good, Izuku says softly. That kind of promise keeps surgeons honest. Stain vanishes the way danger sometimes gets bored. The alley exhales. The hospital screams. It's not bombs. It's gravity and neglect. A section of the renovation ceiling drops like a drunk decision onto a bay of folding chairs and fear. Izuku is already moving when the first tile slams. Nagant is a blur past the door, snapping a shot up, not at a person, at a sagging beam that wants to be a guillotine. The shot pins a bracket. The bracket buys 2 seconds. 2 seconds comes lives in the hands of people who know how to spend. Izuku slides under the collapse like the floor decided he owed it money. OFA pops through his calves into his soles and he makes a cushion out of air. Dust tries to blind. He lets it. He knows the room by echo. A child's scream cuts everything. He triangulates like math equipped with a heart. He finds a boy half buried under a beam and a stack of chairs, leg pinned. He doesn't throw the beam. He lifts it like a piano on a staircase, careful, careful, and feeds a microburst into the fulcrum so the weight distributes to a spot that will forgive. Hey, little man, he says. Breath steady. I'm your forklift. The kid blinks tears and dust into mud. It hurts. It does, Izuku says. And you're going to brag for a month. Hold this J. Ackett's sleeve like you're winning an arm wrestle. He slides the sleeve into the kid's fist. The kid grips. Good grip. Fighter. A voice bounces off the dust with weird clarity. I've got the left side. Ochako drops into the mess like an answer. Hair tied back, eyes bright with terror's cousin, the one that works. She's already moving people with a fingertip, gently, weightless as a lie, and putting them down like promises that stick. She looks at him, then at the beam, then at the kid. Hi, she says, like they are neighbors meeting at trash cans. You doing math? Bad math made this, he says. We're doing surgery. She nods. On 3. They don't count out loud. Her fingers hover. The beam's weight forgets itself. Izuku slides the kid out and turns his ankle with a precise touch. Pain becomes a path out instead of a roadblock. Mom, the kid says, and he points with his chin. That way, Ochako floats 3 more chairs out of someone's stupid near future. She coughs and ughs in the same breath because the body is weird like that when it chooses to work instead of shake. You came anyway, he says, not a question. I told you I don't give up on people just because the internet learns adjectives. She says, also, you're exhausting and the city needs me to tell you to hydrate. A chunk of ceiling chooses drama at a bad time. He slaps a shockwave into the floor, spreads it like a tablecloth. It catches half the fall. Ochako flips 2 fingers and the rest forgets how to finish falling. Nurses move in, medals hidden behind scrubs, faces set in the way that mean. We will complain later and we will be right. In the hallway, someone starts a chant with his name in it and someone else shushes them because it's a hospital. He appreciates the shush more than the chant. They climb onto the roof for air that isn't powdered drywall. The city is louder now, but its edges are honest. Sirens in the right places, crowds thinning near where he dropped coordinates. Because reporters are busy verifying instead of posturing, a drone trying to look casual above a block he already rerouted. Ochako stands with her hands on the parapet and the rain making constellations on her cheeks. She doesn't look at him when she says, "This is where you tell me you're fine and then do 14 things that are not fine." "This is where I tell you I'm not sorry," he says. Quote, "And I'm not asking you to sign the field trip form." She smiles at the city, small and sad. "You always were better at blowing doors than making people feel okay about walking through them." "Is that a complaint?" "It's a job description," she says. Then she turns until both of them are in the same weather. "If you keep going, there's no going back. That's how roads work," he says. Her laugh is a glitch and a gift. She steps close enough that a normal person would think they were about to choreograph a goodbye, and instead they share 30 seconds of looking at the same skyline with same stubborn hope and absolutely no solution beyond. We keep doing the next kind thing that still counts. "You're a villain," she says finally, eyes on a crane. "But you're not a lie. I can live with that." "I'm not sure I can." They both nod. Adults. No flinching. He can't give her a different version of himself. She can't give him a medal. They trade those truths and don't fall through the floor. Nagant steps out of the access door with her jacket hood back and the night giving her cheekbones it had no right to. She looks at Ochako, then at him. Assessment, not jealousy. She's past high school. She respects gravity. City Watch just pushed a counter feed, she says. Heavy on. Deepfake. Heavier on. Stay home. Let them, he says. Staying home is the right call unless you're holding a ladder or a first aid kit. Quote, "The commission scheduled something cute," she adds, tone dry as rope burn. She hands him a burner with a live transcript. Serif calibration alpha, citywide vector map in 48H. Providence's name sits like a watermark. Sarah's call sign pings ready. The sky pretends not to pulse. "They're going to make the city a lab," Ochako says, reading over his shoulder and not pretending she isn't. "You going to stop them by yelling at the clouds?" "By making the clouds expensive," he says. Ochako exhales through her teeth. "I hate that sentence makes sense." He palms the phone back to Nagant with a look. She tucks it away, already building a ladder of rooftops in her head. "Hey," Ochako says, tapping his shoulder. When he looks, she has her serious face on. The one that knows where to place weight when hearts are heavy furniture. "Promise me one thing. No martyr speeches. That, and," she draws a small circle on his sleeve where dust dull. "D. Green. Don't forget you made your own name before the city tried to give you one." He nods, and it's not a throwaway nod. He files the sentence somewhere important. "I'm going back down," she says. "They're going to find 3 more. Renovation. Rooms and 2 will be nothing and 1 will be a snake nest. I'll need your corridor kids to run waters and blankets and absolute hell at anyone trying to turn patients into a narrative prop." Quote, "They're on it," he says. "Of course they are," she mutters, fond and furious. Then, "Don't be cute with a satellite." "I'm allergic to cute," he says. Shish. E rolls her eyes and vanishes back into the stairwell with a doctor's stride. The door clicks. He and Nagant watch the city rethread its breath. You were gentle, Nagant says after a while. She says it like an observation. Not a compliment. She means it is both. That's the point, he says. She steps closer. Close enough that the rooftop wind has to go around both of them. You know she'll try to save you from yourself. Not by dragging. By holding the world steady so you can stop punching. I don't punch for fun. I've watched you fight, she says, mouth quirking. You might. He huffs a laugh that's mostly a sigh. All right. 2 hours to move the city's attention where it can help. 12 hours to lay track to Camino again. 48 until Providence points a ruler at neighborhoods and calls it science. I'll take the rooftops, she says. I'll take the rooms that think they're secret, he says. He drops off the parapet and lands on a maintenance ladder that knew him before it met him. She follows in quiet arcs that make the rain forget to fall for half a second. Street level is never quiet, but tonight it feels tuned. Less smash, more stack. A queue forms at a pop. Up tent that says blood drive and someone's mom is bossing around a guy with a gym body like he needed this all along. A produce van opens so neighbors can take bananas they can afford and a kid says, no. My mom said one each, and looks proud of the sentence while he eats the banana anyway. An amplified voice cuts across that decent chaos and tries to sell fear. A pop-up stage. A man with a tie that says, committee. He clicks to a slide of the green helix and warns about agents of destabilization, with the vigor of a man who spent all day practicing in a mirror. Izuku walks past with a shrug that suggests, take a number, man. The tie bristles at being ignored. Good. Maybe he'll be too busy nursing ego to organize a counter-protest at a city shelter later. He stops one more fight. A.T. Enager with shaky hands about to throw a bottle at a commission van because he wants to be on the right side of a story and nobody told him this isn't how you edit. Izuku takes the bottle, hands him a broom, points at glass that needs sweeping. The kid rolls his eyes and cleans up, huffing. 2 minutes later he's yelling at a friend for stepping in the shards. People learn fast when you don't insult them. On a side street, 2 tactical guys in commission gray think they can slide a civilian witness into a van without the cameras seeing. Izuku walks by and puts his back to the van door, palms out, an object lesson in friction. He doesn't look at the guys. He looks at the crowd. Film hands, he says. Not faces. He hands the witness a pen and a scrap of paper with a lawyer's number. Tactical guys remember policy and retreat under the weight of a dozen lenses and a polite man who somehow doesn't move when pushed. A drone skates high and draws a sight line. He feels it on the CK of his neck like a headache from someone else's eyes. He tosses a puck blinder Nagant handed him at the lamppost base where a styro halo sensor hides. It sticks. For a week, that post will tell the commission about cloud shapes. Small gifts. At the corner, a kid in a poncho from earlier rolls up on his board with a bag of bottle caps and pride. Yo, spiral dude, he says, whispering like he's at a secret club. I did the thing. Trash and stream. Mom said I can't have a phone in my room but she took a picture of the blood van. Good work, Izuku says. He ruffles the poncho hood like a weatherproof metal. Go home. Can I stay home? He says, with a smile that brooks no negotiation. The kid salutes with 2 fingers and rolls away, almost clipping a cop who has the sense of humor to jump back and laugh. By midnight, the 5 coordinates are busy with investigations not controlled by people who prefer curtains. A young reporter with a microphone she bought herself gets a quat. From a janitor that will crater a career if the right editor remembers what their job is. 2 lawyers file injunctions so fast the paper curls like it's embarrassed to be legal this quickly. The commission pushes its own paperwork. Providence signs a test he doesn't have authority to sign and dares the sky to contradict him. Sarah's call sign pings again in a status light he can feel through the weather. Ready. That word sits wrong in his ribs. He ends the night on a narrow roof above a street market wrapping up its grief in produce. He scratches a green helix onto a chipped pipe with a key. It isn't a brand. It's a map marker. Exit here. Nagant texts a photo from 3 blocks over, the influencer's stream. He's panning across the blood drive line and the caption reads, "We can just be useful." The comments fight. He likes that they have to sleep. She sends inventory. He replies. She sends back a single dot. Period. Fine. Then coordinates at dawn. He replies with a pin and a dumb joke about the world's worst coffee at a pier that refuses to improve. She replies with the shell casing from Camino, its tiny helix catching streetlight gold, and he realizes she kept it in a pocket near her heart where bullets used to be. He files that away under things I can't spend carelessly. He pockets the badge reader. He checks the Archon fragment he copied earlier. He mental maps 2 routes Sarah could use that don't risk bystanders and 1 Providence will order that does. He decides which one to break, which one to bend, which one to make irrelevant. Down on the street, someone laughs for the first time all day and means it. Upstairs in the hospital, someone sleeps because a kid with a broom cleared enough glass that a gurney didn't snag. Somewhere in a control room, say, Ran watches a city he thought he owned start acting like it belongs to itself and begins writing a new lie he'll try tomorrow. Less noise, Izuku tells the night. Not a prayer, a policy. The wind says, work faster. He nods and goes. Chapter 5 end. Chapter 6. When the sky pulls a trigger. No chairs, no speeches, just a warehouse that smells like cut rope and rain, 1 table, and a map taped down so the storm wind can't steal it. Izuku slaps a chalk X on Camino's pier. Ground node here. Secondary relay on the customs roof. Providence fires from orbit as soon as Sarah says I'm annoying enough. Bakugo leans over the map. Palms flat, eyes hungry. You're always annoying enough. Compliment accepted. Izuku draws quick lanes with the chalk. Bakugo, air denial. Don't chase. Steer. Keep the drones off civilians and the halos lines from getting clean. Bakugo grins like someone handed him fireworks and a thesis. I'll herd it till it begs. Mirko, Izuku says, tapping crane icons, you're drone breakers. Think whack a mole but the mole's got a grant. She shadowboxes a crane for fun. Finally, Hawks, Izuku continues, triage and traffic. Build lanes for EMTs. If a choice appears, me or bystanders, pick bystanders and don't look at me like that. Hawks lifts his shades just enough to show the stare. Then he sighs. Fine, I'll be the grown-up. Nagant, precision, nodes first. If you don't have a safe shot, don't invent one. He meets her eyes until she nods. Spinner stands at the edge of the light, hands jammed in a patched jacket, tail swishing. Wheel hold corridors. Food van street, shelter alley. Clinic steps. If any of mine try to make a speech, I'll choke them with a granola bar. Stain, Izuku says without looking, knowing exactly where the man is standing because quiet sometimes hums. Perimeter. If opportunists start filming themselves with broken windows, take their clout or their shoes. Dealer's choice. Stain's teeth show. Shoes are louder. Dobby lounges on a coil of rope like he'd rather burn the plan than follow it. Izuku doesn't assign him anything. He just looks at the map and says, if a fire starts where it shouldn't, put it out. Dobby's laugh is smoke dark. You want me to be a firefighter. I want you to be useful, Izuku says. Try it. Sirens echo somewhere past the docks. Overhead, the storm rolls closer, all static and swallowed light. The cranes creak like old saints stretching. He points at his own chest with the chalk and leaves a green thumbprint. I'll draw the engine's eyes. If I say cut left, don't argue. If I say down, hug the floor like it owes you money. Bakugo cracks his knuckles like a drummer. What's the safe word? Hydrate, Izuku says. Gross, Bakugo mutters, pleased anyway. They move. No rallying cry. Boots on wet metal. Wind slapping faces. Every step a promise to spend pain correctly. Izuku runs the catwalk spine of the main crane and feels the ward wake under him. Lights snapping on, generators grumbling. The sky lifting like a curtain. Sarah arrives quiet. One moment rain. The next, a disk of soft light cuts the storm into neat halves and leaves a woman in geometry standing over Camino. Halo humming, edges clean, her body moving like she's carrying a manual no one else gets to read. Midoriya, she says, calm even through thunder. High again, he says, and angles H. Himself Sashi has to choose between him and the plaza. A dark ring blooms high in the clouds. Providence, patient as attacks form. Hawk's voice hits the bone mic. Lanes marked, east and south. Ambulances in motion. Please try not to create more patience. Mirko laughs into comms because telling her what not to do has never worked. No promises. And then the world pinches. It's not a siren. It's a feeling. Like your quirk sneezed. Bakugo goes first. He hurls an explosion and it eats sound instead of air. The blast bulges, then drops like a dead jellyfish. The hell. He claps his palms, scowling. Providence adaptation. Izuku says, skidding under a light mast as a drone knifes past. Bending vectors. It'll get smarter. Go analog. Analog. Mirko barks, then grins too big. Love that for me. She plants a foot and jumps. No quirk push, just legs and hate. Catches a drone with both hands, and tomahawks it into its friend. Nagant fires. The bullet curves 5 degrees off a line that wanted to be perfect. She flicks her wrist, takes the next at a different break angle, and tags the relay on a mast instead of the antenna. Sparks spit. The halo drinks them, and for a blink the field brightens, busy. Old school. Izuku shouts, throwing a coil. Black Whip ferries a rope to Bakugo. Grapnels and ladders. If your quirk acts weird, treat it like a drunk cousin. Bakugo snarls and leaps anyway. Hands, not blasts. Snag cable. He swings under a walkway, boots out, and kicks a drone so hard its camera forgets it was ever an eye. On the customs roof, a gray coat team drags a suitcase toward the backup relay. Stain hits them like a correction. 2 taps, 1 sweep, clipboard hero asleep. He rips the suitcase open, bears a halo puck, and flicks a blind disc Nagant gave him earlier onto it. The puck throws up weather for a week. Stain bows to the cloud like it knows manners. Sarah glides sideways, halo solidifying where it needs to be and dissolving where it's bored. Archon 01 engaging, she says to Providence. And then she's in Izuku's space, precise. Her first strike is a push with an aftertaste, kinetic now, null later. He answers with a slide that steals the now and gives the later nowhere to land. She adjusts without anger. Good. He can use that too. People are going to die, she says, not melodramatic, just honest math. Not if we spend better, he says, FLI. Seeking a rope down to a trapped dock worker and anchoring it with Black Whip. Hold on, he calls, and the guy holds like he's got something to live for. Providence, Sarah says evenly as she cuts a PR. Escher line around Izuku to nudge him away from civilians. Midoriya is forcing me to choose angles. Request adaptation tier 2. Denied. Providence's voice scrapes the rain. Maintain tier 1. Contain. Your memo hates reality. Izuku tells the sky, and attacks. He throws crumbs again. 5 whispers of OFA at 5 halo nodes, and then stops entirely. The halo starves for a breath. He steps through that pause. Palm to her shoulder plate, not a strike, a post, and spins around her disc. He borrows the field's own stubbornness as a handhold. He wants her seeing it. He wants her to remember. The feel of steady pressure the next time Providence orders an erasure. Mirko barrels along the crane arm, shoulder checks a drone cluster into a tarp, and cackles. Bakugo. Left, 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 left. I know left. He barks, already there. Rope swinging, knee smashing a rotor. Hawks is a moving emergency plan. Feathers flag lanes. He body blocks panic with charm. Green, your plaza is filling. I need that crowd out. Izuku takes one look. Tourists, live streamers, people who always sprint toward blue lights, and whistles sharp. Spinner's crew pops out of alley mouths with signs that don't read like orders. Free water right pointing arrow first aid this way phones charge here. People move because their batteries are at 3% and because a sign that helps is louder than a speech. A beam starts to draw in the clouds. Not firing. Warming. The hair on Izuku's arms rises. Providence, don't, he says into nothing, more to hear the line than expecting an answer. Calibration continues. Providence replies, utterly bored with please. Sarah surges. Her halo narrows to an edge and jabs for the pouch at his hip. He buries the ground key deeper, catches the field on his forearm. Steady, steady, and grinds his teeth through the heat. Stop trying to thread me. He says, breath calm with effort. Help your city. I am, she says, pushing him away from a fall hazard as if the argument didn't apply to her. Nagant relocates without ever looking hurried. New nest, new angle. She sights on the relay that's piggybacked over the plaza awning. Civilians under it. The shot is possible. The math is mean. Don't, Izuku says. I can thread it, she says. Not with Providence bending wind. Sarah's helmet ticks 10 degrees. Archon 01 to Providence. Crowd density rising. Recommend pause. Negative, Providence says. Midoriya makes a spectacle. End it. And then the sky pulls the trigger. The beam drops like a ruler slammed on a desk. Not random. The path draws straight toward the densest heat signature cluster, the plaza. There's a half-second where a smarter world would wait. This one doesn't. Izuku moves. He hits the ground at a dead sprint, burns one for all into the arches of his feet, and detonates under himself. No flourish. Just a brutal, perfect vector. The blast flips him vertical under the newborn column of light. He throws both palms up and answers the beam with a mirror made of pain and math. The shock tries to fold his bones like receipts. He forces the blow to slide instead of stick. The beam smears sideways across air, carving a hot trench through nothing and absolutely no one beck. He and Hawks and Spinner were already lying to geometry 20 minutes ago. Bakugo sees it happen and hollers something wordless that means holy hell, nerd. Mirko claps like it's sport and then punches a drone in half because it's jealous. Sarah lands hard, halo flaring, body ready for a falling hero she didn't ask for. Izuku doesn't fall. He rides his own reflected vector into a roll, eats it with a knee that will hate him tomorrow, and pops to feet like he never left them. Providence's voice loses 3% arrogance. Abort. Adapt. Archive. You okay? Hawks on comms, breath tight. Trying to sound casual and overshooting. Hydrate, Izuku says, grinning because his teeth hurt. Sarah stares for a fraction too long. He can't see her eyes. He doesn't need to. You'll die doing that, she says quietly. Not if you stop making me, he says. Her halo brightens, uncertain. She looks up, listens to a voice he can't hear, and the next push she throws is protective, a curving S. Cream to keep crowd surge from crushing itself. Providence says nothing. Providence logs. Drones regroup. The adaptation field twitches again. Mirko's third jump stutters mid-arc for a heartbeat. She forces it with violence and lands anyway, because she is done being outvoted by physics. Non-quirk route. Izuku yells, pointing. Ladder, pipe, cable, move like a person. They do. Hawks slings a line. Bakugo swings on it and boots a drone sideways. Spinner's people hold the first aid lane with bodies and taped arrows. Stain kicks a riot shield back to an officer it belongs to with a grunt that means do your actual job. Dabi looks at an electrical fire, glares, and then blankets it with blue flame pulled tight until it starves. He meets Izuku's eye and flips him off for making him be helpful. Fine. Izuku re-engages Sarah. No big hits now, no show. He posts on her field again and again. Steady palms, patient wait, the kind of pressure that erodes orders. She tries a new angle. He forgives it physics. She tries to thread his pocket again. He hands her a rope instead and uses the tug to whip himself to the customs roof. Nagant finally gets the relay angle she wanted. Miracle alley-oop. End by a gust Hawks made with feathers and luck. She shoots. The round tags the relay bracket, not the box, and the whole thing yawns. The cable peels. Sparks. The halo flares to eat them. Busy, busy. And Izuku slaps an OFA kiss into the bracket to twist it until the line coughs loose. The ground hum drops a note. Secondary relay down, Nagant reports, squinting through rain. Sarah pivots, breath, audible now in his ear because she let her mic leak. Providence, ground efficiency 69. Recommend adaptation tier 2, or call it, target. Midoriya, Providence replies, cold as new coin. The sky tightens like a throat. Izuku feels the beam choosing him now, not the crowd. Good, bad, useful, draw it, he tells himself, then everyone else, keep working. I'll be loud. He runs, straight line. No tricks, into the widest clearing he can find. He wants the whole damn sky pointed at him. He wants civilians bored. He wants Providence embarrassed by how obvious he looks. The beam stabs again, thinner, angrier. He detonates underfoot, palms up, mirror made of meat and numbers. It hurts the way honesty hurts when you weren't ready. He grinds the vector, turns it, and pops it into AC. Olim of river mist that explodes into steam and absolutely zero funerals. Bakugo whoops into comms like he's 17 again. You're gonna blow your arms off. Grow up, Izuku says, laugh jagged. I superglued them on. Sarah dives. Halo splitting. Half for Izuku, half for the idiots trying to film him from the pier. Leave, she orders them, and every mother in the city hears that tone and drags a teenager backward by the hoodie. Providence, smaller now, grudging, shudder. Learn, recalibrate, and just like that, the pressure eases. The ring in the clouds dulls. The beam dies mid-letter. The drones waver, losing attitude. The adaptation field ticks from clever to curious. Silence tries to be dramatic. Izuku denies it. Status. M's through. Hawks replies, giddy with relief he doesn't admit to. 2 broken wrists, 1 panic attack, 0 laser flambés. Relay. Nagant says, already moving. Ugly. Not dead. I'll be annoying. Mirko waves at a kid from a crane and yells, drink water. Bakugo lands, panting. Hair chaos. He glares at Izuku and then headbutts his shoulder lightly. Don't do that again without me. Team stunned next time, Izuku says. They stand among broken drones and wet footprints while the storm remembers how to be just weather. Sarah hovers at eye level, halo dimmer, posture still immaculate. She looks at the plaza, at the absent body count, at the ground node with its guts showing. She looks at Izuku like someone measuring a person against a mission. You're the statistical inevitability, she says, voice almost normal. No cathedral in it, or the error that makes the model honest. I haven't decided. Decide faster, he says. Your boss is making you stupid. Something in the helmet angle could be a smile, or maybe he's getting better at wishful thinking. Next time, you won't be fast enough. Then bring better orders, he throws back, soft. She lifts. The disc pretends solidity one last time. She ascends into clouds that don't want her and disappears. On the pier, Spinner's people start stacking cones like art. Stain melts into a shadow that smells like rain and rust in approval he will never say aloud. Dobby lights a cigarette with a tiny blue flame like a secret and pretends it's not because his hands are shaking. Bakugo brags to no one about kicking a drone so hard it cried. Mirko takes a bow to an audience of gulls. Hawks lists supplies into his phone while he steers an old man into a chair with a feather tug. The city recalibrates to normal. Izuku leans against a pile of rope and counts how much of his spine still belongs to him. Enough. He can rent the rest back later. Nagant walks up with the case in one hand and a look that could either be a scold or a kiss if this were a different life. She stops close, tilts her forehead to his for a second, just pressure, just presence. The contact is nothing to anyone watching. It's everything to 2 people who don't say, I was worried. That stunt wasn't smart, she murmurs. It worked, he says. I hate that it did. Me too, he says, and means it. She pulls back, thumb brushing dust off his jaw like she's cleaning a weapon. Providence is pivoting, she adds. Eyes on a faraway place only she can see. Less city, more you. Target. Midoriya, he repeats, grim amusement under the bruise. Good. I prefer complaints filed to the right department. Hawks strolls over, shades up. Eyebrows up farther. You were extremely grounded, young man. Hydrate. Izuku says, deadpan. Bakugo barks a laugh. Shut up. Mirko claps his back hard enough to shift a rib. Noodles now or I will suplex a skyscraper. Later, Izuku says, out of habit. Nagant, Hawks, Bakugo, and even a gull all groan at once. Now, Nagant says, 12 minutes. We plan the end of a very stupid satellite. He thinks about arguing, then thinks about how much quieter the city is right now, and gives in. 12 minutes. They walk off the pier together, heroes, villains. The unclassifiable, through steam that still remembers being a beam. People stare, phones rise, fingers point. No chance, no crowd surfing, just that weird hush cities get after they don't die. Izuku glances up. The ring is gone, but the clouds keep its memory. His bones keep something else. A set of angles, a weight, a simple truth. You can't punch a network. But you can make it miss on purpose until it learns shame. He pockets the ground key, feels its wrong weight, and lets his shoulder knock against Nagant's just enough to say thanks without saying it. She knocks back. Hawks pretends not to notice. Bakugo absolutely notices and rolls his eyes into next week. Mirko hums the theme music of a victory that isn't, not yet, but close enough to taste. They disappear into the rain, planning out loud with their mouths full. Chapter 6 End. Chapter 7. Exit wounds, clean exits. The noodle shop has 6 stools, a cracked clock, and a hand-lettered sign that says cash only. Sorry, card machine is a lying liar. Steam fogs the window until the rain turns it honest again. Bakugo shovels like he's in a contest with the concept of broth. Mirko double parks gyoza on a saucer and eats them like each one insulted her. Hawks juggles chopsticks and 3 phone calls without once looking like he's trying. Spinner is on a milk crate by the door with a map folded so tight it might squeak. Stain stands just inside the threshold where he can glare at anyone whose shoes look lootable. Dobby pretends to be bored by soup and fails. Nagant sits sideways on her stool, eyes on reflections. Rifle case underfoot like a loyal dog. Izuku drinks water. Hydrate. Hawks says, deadpan. Gross. Bakugo says, pleased anyway. Alright, nerd. Finish the pitch. Izuku taps the table once and the shop hushes like a conductor lifted a wrist. Providence pushed a new calibration window for tomorrow. They're calling it a citywide vector map. That's pretty for we measure how your lives fit our math. Mirko sighs loud. God, I hate that sentence. Spinner tilts the folded map. Routes are live. Pantry corridors green. Clinic alleys clear. We taped signs that say, free raincoats, so your crowd goes where you want them. Stain's mouth twitches. You weaponized altruism. I labeled the exits, Izuku says. We end this before they make the city a lab. Hawks flips his phone face down. Say when. Nagant nudges his ankle under the stool, and then the whole room tenses because a new voice cuts the rain, tinny and careful, speaking out of the counter radio like it doesn't want to be caught. Midoriya, Sarah says. Nobody moves. The noodle man's ladle hangs in the air like a comma. Izuku leans in. Hey, Archon 01 is locked to Providence for tomorrow's window, Sarah says. I requested a pause. Denied. The comm is there. Something phrase under it. There is a manual override. 2 keys. 1 ground. 1 orbital. Bakugo grins feral. And lemme guess, you got half. Nagant's look says shush. Where? Ground keyhole is in the area, Sarah says. West Tower. Room with the fake server racks. Orbital key is me. A beat for that to land. You're resigning, Izuku says. Not yet, she says. I'm deciding if I'm more useful broken or bent. Dobby snorts smoke. Whole city full of poets. Sarah ignores him. They'll call this a trap. It isn't. It's a door I can't open alone. You can hate me later. I don't hate you, Izuku says. She doesn't answer to that. Providence is listening to everything except what we need. If you get to the area and hold the ground switch, I can point the orbital key away from the city long enough to cut the leash. If you miss, he'll fire to prove he can. Risk. Hawks asks, anyway, it's a job he can't not do. Hi, Sarah says. Cost. Yours. The radio pops once and dies like it remembered it's a radio. Hawks exhales. Cool. Great. Love that for us. Mirko slaps the counter. Finally. A building I can kick. Nagant stands, case in hand. We do this our way. Small. Precise. Dobby rolls his shoulders. You're all allergic to fun. Izuku pays for everyone and leaves too much tip. The noodle man bows like he just watched someone rob a bank politely. Outside, the rain has the clean smell it gets before it decides to be dramatic again. Spiral, Spinner says, falling into step, if your villain arc includes mock. Sure street kids don't get lasered while we do politics, we'll be fine. Izuku bumps his shoulder on the way out. Hold the corridors. They split. Hawks peels high to draw the attention that needs drawing. Mirko Lopez along rooftops like they're uneven bars. Bakugo scampers vertical with rope and cussing. Nagant vanishes into angles. Dobby takes a path that coincidentally runs parallel to fire hydrants. Stained as perimeter like grammar. Spinner's patched jackets bend the map back to the city it wants to be. Izuku heads for the Airy. The Airy is a glass hymn to money with a concrete heart that smells like old wires. Daytime. Press conferences and polished shoes. Tonight. Security badges, quiet elevators, a lobby plant that deserves better. He doesn't badge in. He walks through the delivery bay where a tired guard just wants his shift to end. Izuku asks him where the bathroom is like a cousin, gets pointed, and then slides sideways through a maintenance door on the back of a Psy. Blackwhip maps the seams. OFA does the radar hum. He wears the building like a borrowed coat. The Airy breathes with him. Fans, vents, useless art. Third sublevel sings a different note. Newer drywall, expensive locks. The particular silence of a room pretending it's empty. Two gray coats stand outside the fake server room. They look awake enough to startle and tired enough to forgive. Izuku brings a paper bag out of his jacket. It's greasy because it's supposed to be. Deliveries for two people who chose the short straw, he says, cheerful. Pan-fried sincerity. The first one blinks. The second almost smiles and then remembers he's a professional. We didn't order. Everyone orders, Izuku says, and steps inside as they decide whether to be offended. The servers hum. They're wood with fans bolted to the back. Cute theater. Behind them. A stainless steel panel with no handle. He touches it and the skin on his fingers rings like a glass. Yep. He feeds the panel a steady press of OFA and refuses to give it change. The lock's listening circuit starves. It opens because it doesn't know how not to when asked by patients. Ground keyhole. Brushed metal, embossed with a taw. Steffel halo logo that wants to be a blessing. He fits the stolen key fragment against its mouth. The fit is wrong in exactly the way he expected. Providence likes the illusion of uniqueness. He smiles, takes the fragment away, and slides a plain steel wedge he had Hawk steal from a firehouse into the slot. It jams beautifully. The panel hisses a complaint that sounds like a prayer gone sideways. A red light wants to throw a tantrum. He puts a fingertip over it and gives it a nap. He presses his bone mic. Nagant. Roofline. She says, breath even. Stain's got your west stairwell. Mirko's making friends with a skylight. Hawk says, a beat of affection he didn't know she kept. Then, doing 3 jobs at once. Bakugo crackles in. Problem. 2 squads moving to your level. On it, Dobby says. And the fire alarms in the East Hall trip, not with smoke, but with petty stubbornness. Doors drop. Security reroutes. Squads detour. Utility closets apologize. Sarah's voice ghosts the bone mic. Close in his ear in a way that would be intimate if it weren't fraught. I'm in position. When you jam the ground, Providence will fire a warning shot for principal. I'll bend it. She doesn't say trust me. She doesn't have to. Izuku flips his phone to the Green Helix broadcast app. Barebones, ugly, 10 seconds of proof, not pageantry. The camera catches his hand on the ground panel and the embossed Halo logo, the sublevel marker. The tasteful fake server rack. Hi, he tells the city, smiling like he's about to ask if anyone wants tea. This is where they tell the sky what you're allowed to be. He clicks the app off at 10. No more, no less. Alarms accept their destiny and go full opera. Greycoats finally realize they should be angry. Izuku moves through them like water with elbows. He doesn't hurt anyone. He plants them in chairs they didn't know they owned. Mirko, he says. Punch the ceiling. Mirko obliges. The skylight gives up. Rain blesses carpet that deserved it. Woe drones try to act brave and find out physics prefers rabbits. Bakugo. Vents, Izuku says. Say less, Bakugo says, and rips a panel off the wall with both hands because he's been waiting for Som. E1 to ask him to break an office building politely. He shoves smoke canisters, non-lethal, into the duct and coughs up a laugh when air handlers panic. Stain. Doors. 2 guards charge his way. They slip. He places them gently against drywall and tells them to breathe through the edge of a nap. Nagant, Izuku says. I need a switch I haven't seen yet. She doesn't answer. She fires. The bowl. Let punches a hole in the false ceiling 6 meters down the hall and knocks a little white cap off a sensor that was pretending to be nothing. The panel flips. A secondary key port sighs hello. Left, she adds. Copy, Izuku says, and wedges his wedge. Providence, Sarah says, voice thinner now, like she and the sky are arguing privately. Ground as compromised. Repeat. Ground as compromised. Recommend pause. Negative, Providence says. Demonstrate control. The roof anxiety sharpens. Izuku looks up though he doesn't need to. He feels the line forming like a bad idea in a group chat. Here it comes, he says. The beam knifes down the side of the building toward an empty plaza because Hawks moved the people 30 minutes ago and spinner taped a sign that says free coffee 2 blocks left. It's a light show for a place that knows it's a stage and refuses to perform. The beam cuts air, eats rain, and needs something to matter. Sarah bends it. Not much. Enough. The arc softens. The beam slides off the Aries skin and scalds empty angle. Steam collars the building in an honest gasp. Providence recalibrates like a cat offended by its own reflection. Archon 01, Providence says, and if a voice can squint. This one does. Return to profile. Working, Sarah says, and he hears something like a laugh hiding behind the word working where a salute used to be. Izuku steals the moment. He pulls the visor sideband out, slots the copied Archon fragment in, and feeds the ground panel a handshake it's supposed to love. It accepts with the eagerness of bureaucracy offered a form. The LED strips along the wall shift from red to a queasy yellow. Hawks barrels through the stairwell door with 3 paramedics behind him like obedient ducklings. You have 90 seconds of C. Vic Grace before this turns into statements. Which door do I hold? Izuku asks. West, Hawks and Nagant say together. He grins despite the adrenaline. Security finally solves the riddle. What if we did our jobs, and forms a line. Dobby stands between them and something expensive and sighs, then makes fire behave like a curtain. It's heat without flame, a wall that says no without saying burn. He's sweating. He pretends it's rain. Okay, Izuku says to no one in particular and also to himself. He plants both hands on the panel. He pushes nothing into it and refuses to stop pushing. The lock starves. The light shakes. The building makes a helpless, expensive noise. Sarah's voice gets closer somehow. Orbital ready. Say when. Now, he says. The ceiling hum goes from teeth hurt to bone hurt. The radio on a guard's hip squeals and dies like it couldn't pick a side. Above, the sky pulls a trigger that expects obedience. The beam drops a clean letter. Sarah cuts it with a halo into a curve that belongs in a physics meme. It screams at air and writes its anger on nothing. Providence snarls the only way systems snarl. A log file with caps. Brute, Izuku says quietly, and the Gr. Keyhole pulls against his hands like a dog that hates leashes. He drives OFA into the panel not as force, but as refusal to change. The light inside the wall flickers. The green helix on his wrists. T-band glows for no reason physics can justify. He keeps pressing. Something clicks. An old, bad sound. The Aerie decides to obey him because he is the most consistent object in its world at this moment. Ground key held. The room says in a polite unhappy chime. The panel slides from yellow to a stubborn, deeply offended green. Archon 01, Providence says. Do not. Sarah's voice cuts him clean. Sarah. Resigning. Silence. Not dramatic. Disbelieving. Archon 01 disengaging. She continues, helmet logic sliding out of her tone and something human stepping in. Orbital key relinquished to fail safe. Providence hisses incorporate. This is a violation. Sarah answers like she's telling someone it's raining. So arrest me. The halo above the building thins to thread. The beam stutters and then stops mid-anger. The ring in the cloud folds in on itself like it remembered it has better things to do. In the hall, 2 gray coats lower their guns and stare at their shoes. One starts to cry and hates that he does. Alarms keep singing because they don't know how to be supportive. Hawks leans against the wall and rubs his eyes like someone turned all the fluorescent lights off at once. Tell me we're done. Izuku shakes out his hands. They're trembling and he doesn't bully them into stillness. Almost. Almost. Bakugo barks. What else is there? Seiren, Nagant says, already turning, already hunting. Director Kuratsuki loves a back door, Izuku says, and pushes into a stairwell that leads up where the carpet gets expensive. On the 10th floor, the glass gets a view it hasn't earned. Seiren stands with his tie straight and his eyes calm, as if the room wrote a script that didn't update in time. He's flanked by 2 commission lawyers in matching disappointment. Midoriya, he says, almost fond. You made a mess. It was tidy where it mattered, Izuku says. Seiren glances at the Halo logo embossed on the wall and then back at Izuku's hands. You really think anyone will thank you? You really think chaos is care? Izuku walks until the space between them is made of choices and not just air. You told a machine to decide who gets to be. You hid math under a church word and called it inevitable. I don't need thanks for refusing your inevitability. Everyone wants a god, Seiren says. I built one that listens to budgets, Nagant says from the doorway, rifle low. You built one that listens to budgets. Seiren's eye flickers annoyance. Miss Tsukauchi, you're still dramatic. She smiles without lips. You fired me, remember? I got better. Hawks steps in. Feathers small and efficient. This the part where you surrender gracefully, director. Seiren checks the window like there's going to be a dramatic helicopter and hates the rain for not giving him one. Providence will recover. The city will forget. They always do. Maybe, Izuku says. But not before a janitor you underpaid hands a reporter a ledger and not before a dozen people you arrested wrong walk out into daylight and say your name with the right kind of voice. Seiren smirks. I'll be a board seat by Tuesday. You'll be arraigned by noon, Stain says from the hall, voice like a polite threat. Seiren flinches because some names don't need costumes. Hawks gestures with a feather. 2 uniformed officers, civic, not commission, edge into the room, nervous but proud. One reads rights. Seiren listens with the expression of a man who intends to file a complaint about the diction. The lawyers start to object. Nagant yawns on purpose. It works better than a taser. Izuku looks out at the city while the arrest happens. The rain lets up enough to show him 5 green helixes chalked on 5 different corners by hands he hasn't met. They're not his. They're exits. A helicopter comes anyway, late and more apologetic than it intended. Sarah steps out of it on the roof as Hawks shepherds Seiren toward the elevator. She has her helmet off. Her hair is wet and human. Nobody points a camera and everyone wants to. She looks at Izuku the way you look at a bridge you almost jumped off and didn't. You were right, she says. It failed already. I'm sorry it took your resignation to prove it, he says. She shrugs and looks heavier. You burn a myth. It smells like your hands for a week. She glances at the panel light glowing the particular green of a tantrum that lost. He'll try again. He'll try something dumber, Izuku says. We'll be ready. Sarah holds out her badge. He takes it because throwing it at the floor would feel like a speech. He turns it over in his hand. It weighs nothing and everything. He pockets it like evidence and like a promise not to let it become a souvenir. I owed you a better ask, he says. You paid it back, she says. She looks at his hands. You're shaking. I hate steady pressure on electronics, he says, and grins crooked. Also feelings. She barks a small, honest laugh and steps past him toward the arrest that just finished being an arrest. She doesn't look back. He respects the choice. Downstairs, the lobby fills with reporters, then lawyers, then people who aren't sure which they are yet. Spinner's jackets make lanes between tripod legs. Stain stands by the entrance like spellcheck. Dobby leans on a pillar and pretends not to be guarding the blood pressure machine a nurse wheeled in for free checks. Mirko teaches a kid to shadowbox softly so his hands have something to do that isn't breaking. Bakugo holds up a cone and says, "Free water," with the enthusiasm of a man announcing a bomb demonstration. It works. Ochako finds Izuku on the steps and hands him a paper cup like it's a medal and also an order. You look like a power outlet someone punched, she says, soft and dry. Hydrate, he says. She fights a smile and loses. I heard you saved an entire plaza by arguing with light. Mirko punch more, he says. Bakugo swore better. She taps the green helix on his wrist wrap. They're going to call you worse things. Tomorrow. The next day. It's going to get stupid. I can handle stupid, he says. The city handled worse. She nods, serious again. You can come home when you want. No pressure, no plea, just an address he's always known. I can't, he says. Not yet. I know, she says, and it doesn't break anything between them. It makes the space honest. Hawks saunters by, shades askew. Feathers limp with overwork. Press wants you, he says to Izuku. Also, the mayor. Also, 3 aunties who think you need to eat. I'm on a strict noodle plan, Izuku says. Cursed diet, Hawks mutters. But the relief in his voice sounds like a city taking its first real breath in days. Cameras shuffle into place. A mic herd creeps. Izuku holds up a hand and the herd stops 3 meters back. Confused by the quiet assumption of the motion. He doesn't step to a podium. He doesn't have one. He doesn't thank anyone because gratitude belongs to kitchens and stairwells and corridors, not to glass steps. He speaks to the street instead. 10 seconds, he says. Proof, not pageantry. He turns, lifts the badge Sarah handed him into the frame of a dozen phones, points at the ground panel light still showing its sulk, and says the only sentence that matters tonight: we turned it off. 10 seconds ends. Phones drop. People breathe. Someone laughs for the right reason. An auntie presses a samosa into his hand like she's awarding a medal. He eats it because rejecting love is a bigger sin than hubris. Nagant appears at his shoulder, close enough that their sleeves touch. She says nothing. That's the point. Bakugo shoulders up and bumps him, gentler this time. You're an idiot. Professional, Izuku says. Mirko wipes rain off her face with her forearm and D grins at the sky like they just wrestled and she wants a rematch. Spinner takes a photo of volunteers taping exit here arrows over no public access signs. Stain watches the doors and lets people wit. Tired faces pass without testing their definition of heroism. Dobby licks 2 fingers and snuffs a candle no one asked him to snuff, just to prove he can. Hawks texts the supply list to 3 neighborhoods before the adrenaline can crash. The rain stops trying to be drama. It just is. Later, on a roof that forgot its own name, Izuku chalks a small green helix on a vent pipe and writes 2 words under it in blocky workman letters. Less noise. Not a manifesto. A maintenance note. Nagant leans on the parapet and watches the cranes hold their arms up like they're stretching after a long shift. So, she says. God dethroned. For now. Commission decapitated. For now. Crowd isn't on fire. What now? Roots, he says. Corridors. Clinics. Lawyers. Boring work. She nods, like he just told. Her dinner will be leftovers and she's thrilled. Good. He laughs, soft. You hate speeches. I hate gods more, she says. He looks at his hands. They're steadier. The tremor lives under the skin and will complain in the morning. He pockets Sarah's badge and the steel wedge and the marker that makes helixes. He pockets the thank you from the noodle man as a crinkled 10 slipped into his hoodie by a guy who doesn't do paydiame. The city hums. Not the old hum that tried to tighten like a fist. A different one. Like a crowd learning a new song without needing a conductor. He doesn't bow. He doesn't promise anything he can't make with his own 2 hands. He tips 2 fingers at the cranes and the rain and the building that learned to say yes to the right pressure. All right, he says to the work. Let's keep it tidy. Then he climbs down. Chapter 7 ends.